Hello everyone! We're going to be opening the next part of Ash's Alola Journey rewrite with our second movie. This film will be called The Power of Us, Zeraora. As I explained back in the Akala chapter of this story, I'm not going to be following the canon anime choice of creating original alternate universe movies for the Sun and Moon series, and instead, our movies are still set in the universe of the main story. Now, I know we left off on a pretty big cliffhanger last time, so let's not take too long with this movie. But just for some clarity, this movie is placed in between the events of Ash and Hal's Thrifty Mega Mart trial and their grand trial, so right before Selene and Lillie's Po Town raid. I'm just mentioning this so you guys don't think this movie is smack in the middle of the Po Town events, and it'll explain why Selene Steenie is appearing as a Bounsweet. Since our first movie was an alternate version of the Marshadow film, this time we'll be basing movie 2 off of the Zeraora movie. So let's see if we can escape the typical Sakura rambling and get through this quickly. We start off with Ash, Selene, Lillie, and Hao riding a bus into Fula City, which is on Ula Ula in this universe. The four of them are discussing the Wind Festival while munching on some malasadas. Ash is very excited for the Pokemon catching race and states that he plans to win. Selene, on the other hand, proclaims that she'll be the winner, while Lillie says that she just wants to have fun. Hao, meanwhile, is too busy stuffing his face with more malasadas to say anything. As the bus moves closer into town, we see Zeraora running through a forest from afar. The kids make it to the center of the city and spend time playing some games at the festival before the catching competition begins. Hao actually gets a high score and wins a prize, a Pokédoll, which he gives to Lillie. The Pokédoll is oddly heavy, but she doesn't think too much about it and just puts it in her bag for Moon and Nebby to play with later. And on that note, the Pokemon are also out and about, enjoying the festivities. Finally, it's time for the Pokemon catch race. All of the kids are thrilled to participate, though unbeknownst to them, a Pokemon poacher has infiltrated the event, looking to steal strong Pokemon in the competition. Ash and the others get off to a great start, making a lot of captures. With the help of his Pokemon, Ash is able to catch 6 Pokemon rather quickly. Selene, on the other hand, captures 5, thanks to Peach using Sweet Scent to lure the Pokemon to her. Lillie struggles slightly until she decides to mimic Selene's strategy. She has Cleffy use Follow Me to attract a large group of Pokemon. As they approach, she catches them all, giving her 10 Pokemon caught. Hao, meanwhile, is his ever-lax self, and has so far only caught 1 Pokemon. His own team is a bit concerned by their lack of progress, so Raichu decides to help out, using her psychic powers to find hiding Pokemon easily for Hao to catch. He manages to add another 3 to his collection. All of the competitors continue to make progress. Meanwhile, the Pokemon poacher has his sights set on a Tyranitar. He uses a gadget to shoot a rope around its neck in an attempt to catch it, but from afar, Zeraora, who is watching this entire thing, sees this. He uses a long-range attack to try to free Tyranitar, and while this does destroy the rope, it also spooks Tyranitar, who begins going on a rampage. This catches the attention of Ash, who halts his progress in the competition to stop the rampage. With the help of all of his Pokemon, Ash manages to calm Tyranitar and remove the rope around its neck. The Pokemon is grateful, but because of this, Ash winds up being surpassed by the other competitors. Selene, who kept up her strategy, winds up winning, having caught 20 Pokemon. Lillie gets second place, with her total of 15 captures. Hao only just made it to 11, while Ash ended with 9 due to the distraction. Selene, Lillie, and Hao are thus awarded first, second, and third place medals respectively, but Ash is given a special honor by the mayor as thanks for stopping Tyranitar. Mayor Oliver then announces that cleanup efforts will be needed as a result of Tyranitar's rampage, but Ash and the gang are happy to volunteer. Zeraora watches all of this in the distance. The following day, Ash, Selene, Hao, and Lillie would participate in the cleanup efforts along with the other citizens. And this would go by quickly, especially due to all of their Pokemon helping out. While cleaning, they'd encounter someone who'd tell them about the mythical Zeraora, who used to live on the mountains and was viewed as a guardian of the city, but eventually it put a curse on the mountain that it once lived on and sadly no longer exists. This saddens the kids, who all think Zeraora sounds cool, but this same person tells them that another rare Pokemon, Lugia, also visits the city and explains that to them. Unbeknownst to them, The Pokemon poacher overhears everything being said to them. After a long day of cleaning, the mayor announces that the festival is welcome to resume once more in the morning, which everyone celebrates. The poacher, meanwhile, is seen roaming the mountains as Zeraora hides in the trees, glaring at the man angrily. The next day, everyone notices that the city's windmills are no longer turning, and it's revealed that the Eternal Flame has been stolen from Fula City Stadium. Ash and the gang go over to search for it, where they meet up with Mayor Oliver, who explains the significance of the Eternal Flame. The flame allows Lugia to locate the city and then supply it with wind. Ash and the gang decide to split up to search for this flame. As it turns out, the Eternal Flame was stolen by the very poacher who was on the mountain, using it to lure Lugia. Seems he's after both of the rare Pokemon. Once Zeraora notices this, it immediately confronts the poacher. The man sends out a few Pokemon to attack the mythical Pokemon, and a big battle ensues. The battle causes huge explosions, which are noticed by the citizens. Even though they were told that the mountain is cursed, Selene suggests going over to see what's wrong. Lillie is beyond fearful and doesn't want to go, and likewise, Hao notes that they should continue searching for the flame. So they choose to split up. Selene and Ash decide to go to the mountain, while Hao and Lillie remain in the city to look for the Eternal Flame. Ash and Selene quickly make it to the mountain thanks to their Ride Pager Pokemon, and they notice Zeraora being badly beaten. They manage to save the mythical by sending out their own Pokemon to battle and defeat the poacher, who later flees. Selene then notices the Eternal Flame on the ground and goes to grab it. Meanwhile, Ash notices that Zeraora is injured. He tries to approach the Pokemon, but it fires thunder at him, which Pikachu intercepts with Thunderbolt. Zeraora then runs off. Ash and Selene leave and reunite with Hao and Lillie and explain what happened. And this is when Mayor Oliver explains the full history of Zeraora. It was once the master of the land, but began to despise humans when they caused a forest fire which endangered many wild Pokemon. Zeraora saved the Pokemon, but resented humans ever since, leading the former mayor to lie that Zeraora had vanished in order to discourage people from going back to the mountain. At the same time, the poacher is seen again, still with a desire to capture Zeraora after losing the Eternal Flame. He creates a massive explosion with the existence of his Pokemon and other technology, and this leads to a giant cloud of smoke to billow into the sky. This smoke cloud winds up harming the nearby wild Pokemon. As the smoke cloud is seen by the Fula City citizens, the mayor notes the devastating situation. Ash and his friends once again decide to help in order to protect the Pokemon like Zeraora once before. Ash is tasked with returning the Eternal Flame. Selene and Hao are set to go to the power plant so that they can use the generator to create a wind to blow away the smoke. And Lillie will try to help the injured Pokemon. Ash calls out Tiny and gives him the Eternal Flame. With the enthusiasm of sports players, Tiny and Ash rush off to the stadium. Selene and Hao are on their way to the power plant until a fire blocks their path. They try to use their water-type Pokemon to put out said fire, but they're struggling. Eventually, Ariel and Dartrix, in their respective desire to help their trainers, use a combined attack of water and grass, and this creates a swamp around the area, causing the fire to die down. Selene and Hao are confused by this, but don't have too much time to think about it, and simply continue moving on. Lillie has made it to Zeraora, and tells it that she wants to help it save the wild Pokemon, but it attacks her. Her Pokemon get into a battle, but are becoming overpowered. This leads to her pulling out an Ultra Ball, saying that only this Pokemon can help out now. Ash and Tiny continue making their way to the Eternal Flame pedestal, with the rest of Ash's Pokemon helping to clear their path of obstacles. Selene and Hao, meanwhile, have arrived at the power plant. At first, they are unsure of what to do, but Raichu uses her electric and psychic powers to start up the control panel, thus restarting everything. Lillie is seen recalling a Pokemon to an Ultra Ball, as Zeraora remains distant, though it appears noticeably less violent. Still, after it launches a Plasma Fist, which Lillie dodges, its attack almost hits a group of wild Pokemon. Lillie's Pokemon rush in to save them, and Zeraora is impressed upon seeing this. Mayor Oliver contacts the children through Rotom Dex and tells them that they need to find some way to move the propellers. Once again, Raichu manages to do this with her psychic abilities, and then Selene decides to use Peach's Sweet Scent toward the propellers to counter the harmful smoke cloud. This winds up working and the air is cleared. The fire is still raging at the stadium though, and Zeraora, Lillie, Selene, Hao, and Mir Oliver arrive to help. They manage to activate the stadium's sprinkler system to put out the fire. At first, everyone is happy until a bunch of debris is about to fall and crush Lillie, Selene, and Hao. But Zeraora rushes in to save everyone, finally regaining its willingness to protect humans. Zeraora nearly falls, but Ariel creates a water balloon bubble to cushion its fall. Meanwhile, Ash and his Pokemon finally reach the Eternal Flame pedestal, and the baton is put in place. Lugia then appears and uses Rain Dance to finally end all the negative effects of the explosion. It then uses Hurricane to power up the city turbines once more before leaving. Everyone celebrates together, and they all thank Zeraora and Lugia for helping them. The following night is the last day of the festival, and Zeraora has even stuck around. All the townsfolk are happy to see it enjoying itself, and Hao and his Pokemon even share Malasalas with it. After some time, Mayor Oliver officially declares that the Fula City citizens and Zeraora will live in peace once more. The mythical Pokemon happily nods at him before heading back to the mountains. But it bids Ash, Lillie, Hao, and Selene farewell before it does. The film ends with everyone thanking Zeraora and Lugia once more, and releasing orange lanterns into the sky to commemorate the festival. And now, back to the main show. Ash and Hao ask Rotom-Dex what's wrong, and he explains that Lillie and Selene went to Po Town, and they're in big trouble. Naturally, the boys are shocked, as they had no idea the girls were in Po Town. Hao asks what happened, and Rotom-Dex says that the girls were ambushed by Team Skull members, and they called upon an Ultra Beast to attack them. At this point, Gladion doesn't even wait to hear any more, and calls out no before climbing onto it and dashing off. Nanu scolds Gladion for his recklessness, and Ash explains that Gladion's sister is one of the girls in danger, and says that they should go as well. Hao asks the Kahuna to join them, but he points out that none of his Pokemon are capable of battle right now, as a result of their recently finished trial. Hao facepalms, completely forgetting that they just fainted 6 of his Pokemon. Regardless, Rotom-Dex re-emphasizes the emergency, so Ash and Hao take out their ride pagers and call upon a Charizard and Garchomp to ride over to Po Town. Nanu watches in concern, knowing that anything happening at Po Town can't be good. Ash and Hao arrive to Po Town and land in the middle of town. To their surprise, they meet right back up with Gladion, who seems to have just arrived as No rushes toward them. Gladion points out to this large, shady house at the back of town, and explains that the building is usually where Guzma and most of his lackeys hang out. It's also where they tend to scheme up ideas to mess over island challengers. The group hears a loud explosion coming from the shady house, and immediately rushes inside. Bursting through the doors, the kids are met with a sight of destruction and injured Team Skull members. Gladion runs over to a grunt and grabs them by the collar, demanding to know where the girls are. A glare from Nell easily gets the guy talking, and he directs them down the hall. All the boys run toward the back of the house and enter a large room, which is in ruins. Furniture is destroyed, and even worse, there is a huge gaping hole in the roof, the moonlight shining into the room. Ash, Hao, and Gladion rush over to where they see Selene in a side corner, a few of her and Lily's Pokemon surrounding her. Meanwhile, Lillie is standing in the center of the room, right across from Plumeria, and what they assume is a massive Ultra Beast. But what shocks Ash and Hao the most is the Pokemon standing next to Lillie. It's No. The Pokemon is a clear duplicate of Gladion's Pokemon No. The only difference is the coloring. Lillie commands the Pokemon, which she calls Silvally, to use Double Edge. Plumeria, on the other hand, tells the Ultra Beast to intercept it. The beast obeys her command and dashes over to grab Lily's Pokemon. Both creatures collide in the center of the room and appear to be an even match. Selene expresses her shock at seeing the boys and tells them this Ultra Beast has defeated a lot of their Pokemon and they need help. Ash sends out Tiny, while Hao goes with Crystal. Gladion sends out his now evolved Zoroark to battle with No. All of the Pokemon lunge at the Ultra Beast. Tiny pummels it with close combat. Crystal hits it repeatedly with Bone Meringue. Zoroark hits it with Flamethrower, while Null uses Air Slash. The beast takes a lot of damage, but maintains its footing and punches Lily's Pokemon in the face. It's pushed back, but runs right back in with Double Hit. Selene comments that the beast is extremely strong, so they'll need to really go all out. Hal comes up with an idea and orders Crystal to use bone meringue directly at the beast's legs, and Zoroark hits it as well. The Ultra Beast does start to wobble, but roars loudly and pushes them all back. Ash says that this Pokemon is clearly powerful, and it seems impossible to defeat. But Selene says it might be possible, with Z moves. After all, she and Lillie were able to scare off the other beasts at the Ruins of Abundance after using a Z move. At this, Lillie becomes concerned, since she only has a couple of Z crystals and none work with her Pokemon. This is when Gladion pulls out a handful of Z crystals and hands them over to her, telling her that she can use one of them. Lillie assumes he snatched them from Team Skull members, who probably stolen them from Island Challengers. Plumeria can see what they're plotting, and demands for the Ultra Beast to quickly take out the opposing Pokemon. The beast begins wildly attacking everything near it, knocking all the Pokemon away. Crystal in particular is flung back toward the wall, but Hal manages to jump up and save her just in time before she hits it. He asks the little Cubone if she's okay, and she looks at Hal in concern. He tells her that he's fine, and he just wants to make sure that she's not hurt. This invigorates Crystal, and she jumps out of Hal's arms. She then cries out into the sky, and with the moonlight shining down on her, she evolves into an Alolan Marowak. Hal is thrilled by this evolution, especially since he knows that Crystal is now a fire and ghost type, and he now has 2 Z crystals which can work with her new types. Rotondex informs Hal that Marowak has just learned Shadow Bone through evolution, so he knows what move he'll be using. Lillie calls Snowy over to her and tells her that it's time for them to finally use a Z move together. Selene decides to use Meadow, pulling out the Flyinium Z Gladion had given her. Since Tiny is out, Ash decides to use the Z Crystal Nanu had just given him, and Gladion calls upon Zoroark. Ash commands Black Hole Eclipse. Hal calls for Never Ending Nightmare. Selene orders Supersonic Sky Strike. Lillie commands Sub-Zero Slammer, and Gladion orders Inferno Overdrive. Null also uses Crush Claw, and Silvala uses Giga Impact. All of the Pokemon launch their attacks, and Plumeria begs the Ultra Beast to fight back. But it seems that even it can't handle the power of 5 Z moves and 2 attacks from such powerful Pokemon, and it gets blasted back through the wall behind it. Plumeria orders it to get up, and though it struggles, it manages to do so. Pleased, Plumeria orders for it to attack again, but the beast has other plans. It begins glowing, and an ultra wormhole opens above it. The beast is pulled through the portal and vanishes in an instant, leaving Plumeria with just her injured Salazzle and Ariados. Gladion approaches the woman and demands to know what is going on. She better have a good reason for attacking his sister with an Ultra Beast. Plumeria rolls her eyes and comments that she didn't know this little brat was his sister. She adds that if he doesn't know what's going on, it's clear that the boss didn't want him to. Without even being commanded to do so, Salazzle uses Smog, shrouding the room in smoke. Meadow attempts to blow away the smoke, but by then, Plumeria has managed to escape. Gladion is beyond furious and screams that she and Guzma will pay for this. He then turns his attention to Lillie, asking if she's okay. She confirms that she and Selene are fine, and thanks the boys for their assistance. Selene explains that those Team Skullfuds were after Moon, but didn't explain why. Hal comments that it's just like those Ultra Recon Squad people, but why? Gladion says that this is the first time that he's hearing of Team Skull wanting anything to do with Ultra Beasts, as Guzma never even implied that he knew what they even were. He tells Lillie that they need to be extremely careful now. Meanwhile, Hal understands the severity of the situation, but he can't help but ask, where did Lillie get her own null? Lillie apologizes to her friends for not being completely open with them, and Gladion says that he thinks it's time for them to explain everything. Lillie and Gladion explain that the Pokemon which Gladion calls Null, and Lillie has nicknamed Silvella, is called Type Null. They explain that it's a Pokemon created by none other than the Aether Foundation. Ash, Selene, and Hal are shocked by this, especially since Lillie seemed like she didn't know about the organization before. Lillie apologizes for not being upfront about her past, but the truth is that both she and her brother grew up on Aether Island, but had to leave. And the reason they both have this creature is because they stole them before leaving. The trainers remain shocked But the siblings continue. They explain that someone at the Aether Foundation wanted Type Null created so that they could use it for one purpose, to defeat and capture Ultra Beasts. Once they had enough Ultra Beasts, they'd use their powers to open an Ultra Wormhole, powerful enough to take them and the Beast to Ultra Space, where they'd live together forever. So far, they'd only managed to capture 2 Beasts, and unfortunately began treating them poorly in their desperate attempts to use their power for their own goals. Selene asks what those Pokemon were. Lillie reveals that one was Nebby, and Gladion pulls out an odd-looking Pokeball, stating that this Pokemon is the other. He then sends out another Nebby. He reveals that this Pokemon's real name is Cosmog. At least, that's what the Aether Foundation called it. When Lillie and Gladion found out what was going on with the Aether Foundation, they took the 2 Cosmog and Type Null and fled, not wanting to see them used for this selfish purpose. And Ash naturally asks who this person even is. Lillie states that it's the Aether President, Lusamine. Selene does remember how enthusiastic Lusamine was about seeing the Ultra Beast, but had no desire she was this obsessed with them. And how of course asks the big question, why did Lillie and Gladion grow on this island? And this is where the siblings reveal that it's because their mother is President Lusamine. She wanted them to help her with her mission, but as they became older, they began to see how much pain her goal put the Cosmog through, not to mention the Type Null, who they forced to wear helmets to control them easier. This led them to flee. Lillie found refuge with Kukui and his wife Burnett, who she became a research assistant for, mainly for the goal of learning how she could help Nebby. Meanwhile, Gladion focused on becoming a strong trainer in order to save Null from being used for Lusamine's mission ever again, and he joined Team Skull. But back then, Team Skull were just a bunch of goofballs, pathetically trying to cause minor inconveniences. Now they're showing their true colors. Selene comments that he probably should have done better than joining a group of troublemakers, but Lillie says that this is not the time to put Gladion down. But Gladion says that Selene is right. He never should have chosen aligning himself with such an obnoxious group, since there were so many other ways for him to become stronger. Ash chimes in and says that it's all good, since at least Gladion never participated in any of Team Skull's worst stunts anyway. As for right now, they need to figure out what to do about this. Rotomdex begins to ring, and the kids are surprised to see Professor Kukui on the line. He informs them that he wants them to visit Poni Island with him right away. This confuses everyone, since they'd already been to the island, only to find it unhelpful to their goals. However, Kukui insists that they head over, stating that he wants them to be there for a conversation he'll be having with the island kahunas. Selene informs him that they just had a crazy experience with Team Skull, which she wants to update him on, as she feels the kahunas should know about this, and Kukui agrees that they can discuss it later. With that, Kukui hangs up, and the kids plan to head with him to Poni Island. Lillie asks Gladion what he'll do, and the older boy states that he needs to find and talk to Guzma, because he's clearly doing something different with his plans, and it seems to be far more dangerous than he ever imagined. If he has access to Ultra Beasts, then he needs to be stopped for sure. Selene tells him that she feels she should go too, since stopping Guzma is her mission. But Gladion tells her that there wouldn't be any point in her tagging along, since he doesn't even know where Guzma is. He advises her to stay with Lillie and the others, and he'll simply contact them on the Rotomdex when he gets wind of where the Team Skull boss is. Reluctantly, Selene agrees. Gladion uses his ride pager to call upon a Noivern and takes to the skies in search of Guzma. The others meanwhile prepare to head to a Pokemon Center to heal up their Pokemon and rest for the evening. But before they leave, Nebby and Moon find something shiny on the ground. Lillie urges them to get back in the bag so they can get to the Pokemon Center, so the two sneakily place the item in her bag as they all leave Po-Town. The following morning, Kukui arrives at the docks outside Malie City, along with his wife Burnett. Ash and Hao are happy to meet her for the first time. The kids eagerly hop on the boat, curious over what Kukui wanted them for. He informs them that all of Alola's kahunas are on Poni Island to discuss creating a Pokemon League. He's only had time to speak to Hala about it in person, but now he's got an opportunity to speak to all of them together on Poni Island, and he wanted the gang to know about it since he wants them to compete. Ash is most excited by this, But this has Selene asking why they need to go to Poni Island to talk, since Poni Island doesn't even have an island trial or kahuna. But to this, even the professor is unsure why the kahunas chose this island as their meetup location. Changing the subject, he asks what they all wanted to tell him about Team Skull. And this has Lillie going into great detail about everything that went down at the Shady House, including the existence of Lillie's secret Pokemon. Kukui is surprised to hear this, since Lillie had been his assistant for a while now, and he had no clue that she even had other Pokemon aside from Snowy, Cliffy, and Sandy. Lillie apologizes for not telling him the truth, but he tells her that he understands why she kept her past a secret from him and Burnett, and doesn't blame her for anything. Burnett adds that she had every reason to want to lie low. She also promises to help Lillie with her goals, however she can, and Lillie graciously thanks them both. The group arrives to Poni Island, where they head to a small house in the Seafolk village. The kids are surprised to not only see the kahunas present, but also all the trial captains, and even Ilio. Kukui goes off to talk to the kahunas, while the children go talk to Ilio. The kids are happy to reunite with him, but he's not too happy. He's been begging for the trial captain of Poni Island to bring back trials to the island, but she's been unwilling to do so. Said trial captain, Mina, soon approaches them, and she explains that she isn't the one who's been the problem here. It's the island guardian, Tapu Fini, who hasn't appointed a new island kahuna to handle grand trials. In fact, she and the trial captains were just discussing the trial they will have once they can have them again. Lillie asks what needs to happen for that, and Mina points out a short young woman standing behind them. Her name is Hapu, and her grandfather was the previous island kahuna, but he passed recently. Mina has been begging for Hapu to take his place, as she feels like she'd be the best option. Not only is she a blood relative of him, but she's the strongest trainer to come from the island in recent times. Hapu interjects that it isn't up to her, but up to the island guardian to make that choice on its own. And Mina retorts that she should at least seek out Tapu Fini to see what its wishes are. The two continue to go back and forth until Professor Burnett interrupts. She says that it's clear that everyone wants Poni Island to have its place in the Island Challenge once more, and if Tapu Fini is the one they need to speak to in order to get them going once more, then their mission should be to find it. Hapu still feels like this isn't something they should just be addressing without prompting from the Island Guardian, but she agrees that Poni Island should be just as part of Alola's traditional challenge as the others. So as the granddaughter of the previous kahuna, and to get everyone off her back, she'll go and ask what Tapu Fini's wishes are. This pleases everyone, and they celebrate the good news. But Hapu has one final request, and beckons everyone to a battlefield outside. Once outside, Mina and Hapu explain that they want to ensure that if trials are to return to Poni Island once more, that the trainers will be strong enough to take them on. So they request a quick sparring match from the gang. Ash and Lillie team up against Hao and Selene. Lillie decides to use Cleffy, Ash uses Minior, Hao goes with Dartrix, and Selene opts for Aerial. Cleffy is handling Dartrix well, while Minior is able to actually deal a lot of damage to Aerial. Mina and Hapu are impressed with the battling capabilities of the kids. Things are going a bit better for Ash and Lillie, but in the middle of battle, Aerial and Dartrix begin glowing, and together they launch a combined attack at their opponents. Columns of water and leaves strike Cleffy and Minior, setting them flying and causing a swamp to surround the battlefield. Hao and Selene remember this from their experience in Fula City, and realize that they never had time to properly investigate it before. Professor Kukui, however, reveals that their Pokemon just use the moves Water Pledge and Grass Pledge, two unique attacks that when combined can create this interesting environmental effect. Hao and Selene are thrilled over the fact that their Pokemon had learned new moves the whole time. With this new revelation, Selene and Hao manage to do even better, though Ash and Lillie certainly don't back down. But Mina actually ends the battle before any Pokemon are knocked out. After seeing just that small sparring, Mina and Hapu are convinced that Hao and Ash are truly as determined to take on Poni Island's trials, and they can begin right away. Hapu reminds herself that there's no point in doing any trials if there's no kahuna to give them a proper battle once they finish. She needs to get things moving ASAP. As such, she announces that she'll be visiting the Ruins of Hope to speak to Tapu Fini about appointing a new kahuna tomorrow. In the meanwhile, she approves Ilio, Ash, and Hao to take on the totem Pokemon of the island. Lillie asks where said totem Pokemon are, since Kukui pointed out their absence last time. Mina nonchalantly explains that Poni Island's original totem lived in Vast Poni Canyon, and that it's true that it hadn't been seen in ages. However, locals have been reporting hearing sounds coming from that area recently, with many even believing it may have returned, though most were too scared to go into the canyon, as that totem was always deemed the strongest in Alola. So with that said, she'd prefer to focus on another totem Pokemon, a fairy type, who she's built a trial around, and thinks could put up a great challenge to island challengers. She even managed to get the other trial captains involved. Ilya becomes even more excited, and begs to be the first one to take on the trial now that Hapu is on board. Mina agrees, and the two prepare to head off, as the trial captain lets Ash and Hau know that they can take on this trial tomorrow. Meanwhile, Kukui talks things over with the other kahunas. Kukui explains that for his dream Pokemon League, he wants island challengers to have obtained at least 7 Z crystals from Alola's island trials, along with 4 passport stamps from the kahunas. With Ash and Hau, each having 6 crystals and 3 stamps, they only need 1 more of each. The kahunas agree that this sounds like a good plan, and hopefully if Hapu can get Tapu Fini to choose a new kahuna, everything can go forward soon. Ash, Selene, Hau, and Lillie return, and the kahunas ask if they'll be taking on Mina's trial. Ash, however, surprises everyone, as he says that he's curious about the Vast Poni Canyon totem that Mina spoke about. With it being called the strongest totem, and rumors going around that it's returned, he wants to see if he can face it. He'd want nothing more for his final totem battle. The other kahunas are nervous, but Kukui tells him that he can program Rotondex to guide him there, if he so wishes, for that to be his final trial. So Ash decides he'll go there the following day. Hau, on the other hand, also surprises everyone, as he says that he wants to take on Mina's trial like Elio is, the one with the other trial captains. This shocks the group, who figured he'd just do the same challenge as Ash. But Hau says that with everything that's happened lately, he's decided that he wants to focus more on his own strength by himself. Everyone else around him is pushing themselves to be the best trainers they can be, and he wants to do the same. So he and his Pokemon will take on Mina's trial on Exeggutor Island. Ash respects Hau's decision and wishes him luck. Meanwhile, Selene and Lillie ask Hapu if they can join her at the Ruins of Hope. After all, Lillie has been doing research on the island ruins in order to learn about Nebi, and this is the last one she needs to visit. Hapu is reluctant at first, but decides to allow them to tag along since they've had such positive experiences with the other island guardians. In fact, having them with her may be good. With everyone's plans set, the quartet decide to split up in the morning to complete their missions. The next day, Hau and Mina arrive on Exeggutor Island, and as expected, the trial captains are already present. Hau greets many of the captains happily, telling them how nice it is to see them all again. Everyone catches up for a bit, with the others proudly noting how Ilya was able to clear the trial the day before. But Mina quickly interrupts him and reminds him that they're here for a purpose. This is where Hau remembers what Mina said before and asks exactly what this trial of hers will be and what the other captains will be doing here. Mina tells Hau that his trial will be to battle the other trial captains. The battles will be one-on-ones, but Hau must win them all. If he wins, he'll receive special items which Mina had given to the others in advance. This makes Hau somewhat nervous. Winning 6 battles back-to-back is a daunting task. One error, and he loses his chance at getting to his final kahuna battle. Still, he has to do this. He has his Pokemon at his side, and he's sure he can win. Hau accepts the challenge and tells the captains to bring it on. The first trainer to face Hau will be Ilima. Ilima sends out his Eevee, so Hau naturally decides to go with Crabrawler. One would naturally assume that this would instantly put the battle in Hau's favor, but Eevee is far more agile than Crabrawler and can easily avoid many of his attacks. Crabrawler does take a lot of damage, but manages to get a good drain punch in, recovering a lot of his health. But Ilima doesn't back down, and he stuns everyone by pulling out his Z-Ring. With Eevee, he uses Extreme Evo Boost. With this, Eevee can move even faster and starts dealing even harder hits. Crabrawler starts to struggle, and it looks like he just might fall. But Hau tells him that he knows he can win. He's a Pokemon previously owned by the Mele Kahuna, so he can get through this. This invigorates Crabrawler with an impressive might, and as Eevee closes in with Quick Attack, Crabrawler slams the small creature with a powerful punch, stronger than Hau has ever seen before. Ilima tells Eevee to use Last Resort, but the Pokemon wobbles around in a daze. It's confused. Kiawe comments that it seems Crabrawler just used Dynamic Punch, causing Eevee to become confused. With this opening, Hao quickly calls for a final Crab Hammer. The Crab executes the powerful punch to finish Eevee off, giving Hao his first win in this trial. Ilima awards Hao with an orange petal and congratulates him. The next battle will be against Lana, and she uses an Araquanid. Hao remembers Ash facing the Totem Araquanid way back on Alola Island, but sadly he couldn't pay much attention to the battle since he was facing Wishy-Washy. As such, he doesn't recall how the Pokemon battled all too much. Still, he decides to use Raichu to take on the Pokemon. The battle between the two is fairly even, since Araquanid's powerful Bug-type attacks deal heavy hits to Raichu, but her electric attacks are just as strong against the Spider. Lana actually believed she'd made a smart play by calling for Rain Dance to power up a Scald, but of course, she was unaware that Raichu had learned Thunder in the time since Hao's Brooklet Hill trial. The strong electric attack zaps Araquanid with a heavy blow, and the Spider is nearly taken down. In a last-ditch attempt to win, Lana calls upon her Z move, and Araquanid sends a Hydro Vortex Raichu's way. But Hao has Raichu use her tail as a surfboard, and she surfs through the massive water attack. This impresses all of the other trial captains. Raichu manages to disperse the water with Psyshock, and finishes off Araquanid with a final Thunder. Lana gives Hao a blue petal as a reward for his win. Mallow is up next to face Hao, and she sends out her Shiinotic. Hao decides that Dartrix will be his choice. Mallow decides to take control of the battle immediately, commanding a Confuse Ray to disorient the opponent. Dartrix tries to fight the confusion and does hit a few Razor Leafs, but also winds up hurting himself a lot. This allows Shiinotic to strike hard with several Moonblast attacks. Eventually, Dartrix snaps out of confusion, and by this time, Hao is desperate to inflict some damage. He orders Brave Bird, and Dartrix manages to land the powerful attack. But Mallow orders String Sap on the bird now that it's up close. Hao is unfamiliar with this move, so Mallow explains that the move lowers a Pokemon's attack strength while also healing up the user, something which unnerves Hao. Shiinotic then hits several Sludge Bomb attacks, dealing even more damage to Dartrix. Horrified, Hao begs for Dartrix to pull through, and Dartrix leaps into the air, then dives down, his wings glowing brightly, and he strikes with a brand new move. Sophocles identifies it as Steel Wing. Shiinotic takes big damage from the super effective attack. Mallow doesn't want to risk her Pokemon taking too much damage, so she uses a Z move, but not Bloom Doom. Instead, she orders Z Strength Sap. Shiinotic becomes surrounded with a bright green aura, which Mallow notes has increased her Pokemon's defenses. Shiinotic uses Moonblast once more, but Dartrix uses Grass Pledge to intercept the attack, causing a big explosion. In the smoke cloud, Dartrix flies into the air, charging up a Brave Bird. Mallow calls for Sludge Bomb, but Shiinotic can't properly see Dartrix through the smoke and misses her attack. Dartrix, on the other hand, can pinpoint where the attack was launched from, then slam his attack into his opponent. Thanks to the previous Strength Sap and Z Strength Sap, Shiinotic remains standing, but just barely. It's time for the final strike. Mallow orders Moonblast, while Hao calls for Steel Wing. Shiinotic hurls her attack forward, but Dartrix smacks it back with his iron-coated wing. Shiinotic is too stunned by this to dodge, and she's struck by her own attack, followed by a critical hit Steel Wing, falling in defeat. Mallow commends Hao's Grass-type Pokemon and awards him with a green petal. 3 down, 3 to go. Kiawe eagerly steps up to battle Hao next, and sends out his Charizard. Hao is impressed by the Pokemon, and immediately sends out Vaporeon in response. Kiawe informs Hao that this Charizard was owned by his grandfather, who was the Island Kahuna before Olivia, so he's incredibly strong. Hao already knows not to let his guard down due to the previous battles, so he tells Vaporeon to stay alert. Charizard shows off incredible power right away, striking hard with Fire Punch and Aerial Ace attacks. Vaporeon uses Aqua Tail to intercept a strong Slash, then hit hard with a point-blank Water Pulse. Charizard's Flamethrower hits decently hard, despite Vaporeon resisting the hit, but she fights back with a bunch of rapid-fire Shadow Balls. Charizard dives in for another Aerial Ace. Vaporeon tries to dodge, but she can't, and the strong hit knocks her back. Kiawe then tells Charizard to get ready to use his Z move. Expecting Inferno Overdrive, Hao tells Vaporeon to prepare a Water Pulse to weaken the blow. But Kiawe shocks everyone as he calls for supersonic sky strike. Hao is stunned as he didn't expect to be faced with this attack. He begins panicking, but soon comes up with an idea. He tells Vaporeon to use Aqua Tail to create a whirlpool in the air. Doing so causes Charizard's path in the air to be thrown off balance, and he loses a lot of momentum. So when the attack strikes, Vaporeon doesn't take the full brunt of the attack. From there, a Water Pulse aimed at Charizard from behind does another major hit. The Pokemon stumbles, but tries one last-ditch attempt at a slash attack. But Vaporeon dodges, and an Aqua Tail to the neck puts Charizard out of commission. Surprised but proud, Kiawe hands Hao a red flower petal. Sophocles expresses his shock at how much Hao's Pokemon have grown since he faced Totem Togedemaru all that time ago. Now, though, is where he gets an even greater challenge. Sophocles sends out his Alolan Golem, and Hao makes a risky play by going with Crystal. Kiawe instantly recognizes the Alolan Marowak as the Cubone he once cared for, and is both surprised and impressed to see her now evolved. That said, he questions Hao's judgment, since she's now weak to rock types as a fire type. Hao says that he's already aware of that, but knows that Crystal can still win this. Golem and Marowak get into a rather intense battle. Thunder Punch deals a big hit, but a close-ranged, super effective Bone Club does even more damage to Golem. Sophocles has Golem use a strong Steamroller, but Crystal deflects the attack with Shadow Bone. At this, Sophocles decides that he's done warming up and commands Stone Edge. Crystal attempts to dodge this, but fails, and takes a huge hit from the super effective attack. While on the ground, Golem goes for a finishing Heavy Slam, but Crystal rolls out of the way to dodge at the last second. She then strikes a hard Iron Head, dealing a sharp hit to Golem. Sophocles praises Hao on his strategy, as despite Crystal's type weakness, her available moves are still a great benefit to take on a rock type. But her reign ends here. He orders another Stone Edge, but as Golem slams his fist to the ground to use the attack, nothing happens. Sophocles is utterly confused as Hao smirks, ordering a hard Bone Club in the boy's confusion. As the move strikes, Acerola pipes up that Crystal must have Cursed Body as an ability, and said ability must have disabled the use of Stone Edge earlier in the battle. In a desperate attempt to turn things around, Sophocles immediately has his Pokemon strike with Gigavolt Havoc. A powerful blast of electricity is fired at Crystal, but she rushes into it using her new Flame Wheel attack. The Flame Wheel creates a protective barrier around her body as she charges through the ball of electricity and slams into Golem. Though the hit wouldn't normally be very effective on its own, at this point, Golem has taken far too much damage, and this final hit was enough to take him down, awarding Hao his 5th win. The Electric-type trainer praises Hao while awarding him a Yellow Petal. The final battle for this trial is against Acerola. She giggles mischievously as she brings her Delmise into the fray. Hao only has one Pokemon left who can battle, so he sends out his final pick, the one he specifically saved for the Ghost-type trial captain, Komala. This matchup interests the other captains. Mallow remembers Komala battling against the shiny Totem Lurantis and only recalls it using normal-type moves, which of course won't affect a Ghost-type. So she wonders what Hao's plan is. Acerola calls for Power Whip right away, but Komala rushes in to hit a Sucker Punch. The speed of the little koala is unlike anything the captains had ever seen before, and the move lands a hard strike before Delmise can even prepare its attack. This phases the Living Anchor, but only briefly, and the Power Whip is soon used successfully for a large hit. Acerola wants to get a strong advantage, so she takes out a Z Crystal, but to everyone's surprise, it's Darkinium Z, and with it she uses Z Switcheroo. Hao is unfamiliar with the effects of this move, but he soon sees that it increases a Pokemon's speed, as Delmise begins zipping around the field at an impressive speed. An Anchor Shot is launched before Komala can even register it, which slams him into a nearby tree. A follow-up Power Whip does another huge hit, putting Hao in a dangerous position. Komala goes in for a Wood Hammer, but Delmise uses Phantom Force simply to dodge, as it can't damage the normal type. Still, Hao is completely backed into a corner, but he still has his last resort, his Z move, the one he saved just for this battle. After placing the Z Crystal he obtained from Acerola herself onto his Z Ring, he poses with Komala and has him use Never Ending Nightmare. Delmise tries to zip around the field at its new speed to dodge the attack, but the ghostly arms from the never-ending nightmare trap it. It tries to avoid the move with Phantom Force, but the ghost arms are able to attack it even in the dark void, forcing it back to the forefront. Delmise is then attacked with the barrage of ghost arms, taking a heavy amount of damage. Delmise can just barely hang on after this major attack. So Hal goes in to finish things, commanding the move that allowed him to use Never-Ending Nightmare in the first place, a hard Shadow Claw, which tears into Delmise, finishing it off, giving Hal the win. Acerola excitedly praises Hal for his win and awards him with a purple petal. With that, Hal has won his trial, defeating all the trial captains without losing once. Mina is impressed and congratulates Hal on his win. She rewards him with his final prize, a pink petal. But things are not over yet. He still has one last task, and that's to defeat the totem Pokemon. Hal asks where the totem Pokemon is, and Mina reveals that it can be summoned with the petals he has. Throw them into the wind, and their peaceful scents will attract the totem. He can do so whenever he's ready. After trekking through the ancient pony path, Ash walks into the vast pony canyon, hearing growls all around him. He's nervous, especially since he's completely alone. But he has to do this. This is his final trial, and his final stepping stone to challenging the fourth kahuna of Alola. Down in the center of the rocky terrain, he sees a pedestal, much like those seen at other trial sites. Ash is impressed that the Z Crystal pedestal still stands after all this time of the trial site being abandoned. But the biggest question is the totem still around? Pikachu's ear pricks as he hears a rustling behind him. He lets out a cry just quick enough to alert Ash to turn to avoid what appears to be a Dragon Pulse attack coming right at him. The boy manages to narrowly avoid a hit and thanks Pikachu for the warning. As he turns around, he sees a bunch of Pokemon snarling at him. Ash recognizes the smallest Pokemon as Jangmo-o, while Rotomdex informs him that the larger one is its evolved form Hakamo-o. Pikachu jumps off of Ash's shoulder and prepares to battle. But right before any side can make a move, a loud roar is heard. Ash and Pikachu look around, and soon a massive figure leaps from one of the cliffs above and lands on the ground. The Pokemon roars another ear-piercing scream at Ash and Pikachu, and Rotomdex identifies this Pokemon as Kommo-o, the final form of Jangmo-o. The large Pokemon has a bright golden aura, and Ash immediately figures that this must be the totem Pokemon. So it has returned. Ash becomes concerned as he's surrounded, but Kommo-o gestures over to the Jangmo-o and Hakamo-o standing on the other side of Ash. Rotomdex translates the totem's words. If he wants a battle for a Z-Crystal, he must defeat its underlings. So defeating Jangmo-o and Hakamo-o is the trial then? Alright Pikachu, let's take them down so we can battle Totem Kommo-o. Hakamo-o moves first, and rushes in for a sky uppercut against Pikachu. The small mouse dodges, but the two Jangmo-o underlings manage to hit him with Headbutt from behind, causing some decent damage. Rotom tells Ash that Hakamo-o is a dual dragon and fighting type, so he should keep that in mind. Ash knows that Pikachu is at a huge disadvantage by being outnumbered, so he commands Electro Web. Pikachu leaps up and hurls an electrified net at Hakamo-o. This stuns the Jangmo-o and catches them off guard, allowing Pikachu to strike them both with a hard Thunderbolt. The small dragons are halted due to the surprise shock, so Pikachu slams them both with an Iron Heel, knocking the two tiny dragons unconscious. Ash doesn't notice it, but Totem Kommo-o quirks an eyebrow in interest, not expecting some of its minions to be fainted so quickly. But Hakamo-o is still in the fight, and said dragon finally breaks free of the electric binding. The larger Pokemon then charges at Pikachu with a Dragon Claw, dealing a strong critical hit. Pikachu shakes itself off, and Ash calls him back, not wanting him to get too injured before the totem battle. Pikachu returns to Ash's shoulder, and Ash pulls out a Moonball, then sends out Meteor. The playful Meteor giggles as she enters the battle, floating around the scaled beast before her. Yes, to anyone who hasn't watched the previous part, I do refer to Meteor as female, even though I know it's a gender unknown species. I just don't really like calling Pokemon it if I can avoid it, so yeah. Hakamo'o runs over to use Outrage, and Ash tells Meteor to dodge. Unfortunately, the Pokemon is just a bit slow now, so she gets pummeled by a flurry of Dragonic punches. Ash tells Meteor to hang on, and thankfully her outer shell protects her from the full brunt of the attack. Hakamo'o uses all of his strength to deal as much damage as possible, and actually winds up slightly shattering Meteor's shell. And this gives Meteor just a bit more agility, and Ash sees this as his chance. He calls for acrobatics. Meteor zips around Hakamo'o and slams into it with a super effective strike, taking the opposing dragon down. Ash cheers gleefully and hugs Meteor, thanking her for the great battling. He then turns around to face Komo'o. I defeated the other Pokemon. Now I get a totem battle, right? Komo'o gives a menacing smile before roaring loudly and leaping forward, accepting Ash's challenge. Ash asks Meteor if she'd like to continue battling, and she agrees. So Ash has her get into the battle position. Ash starts by commanding Power Gem, and the small rock creature fires off a litany of sharp rocks at Komo'o. The totem responds by rushing forward with a strong Thunder Punch. This catches Ash off guard, as he didn't expect the super effective attack. The Power Gem appears to barely affect Komo'o, as it rushes through the attack, striking Meteor with a powerful hit. Ash asks Meteor if she's okay, and she nods. Once again, thankfully, her shell protected her from a lot of damage. That said, even more of her shell shattered from that punch. Ash decides that he may as well go all out, and orders a Shell Smash. Meteor glows bright red, and sheds herself of the remaining shell shards, and raises her attack and speed capabilities. Meteor then begins moving around so fast that she appears to teleport, catching even the totem off guard. Ash calls for acrobatics, and Meteor is not quick enough to land a hard strike to Komo'o from behind. The attack hits so hard that Komo'o even stumbles. Ash is happy to see this, but his happiness is only momentary, as a loud sound wave knocks Meteor out of the air. Pikachu notices it first. A Noivern dives down from the sky, smirking maliciously. This must be the totem Pokemon's ally, and it seems that it just used Boom Burst. Meteor struggles to get back into the air, but before she can even register anything, another loud sound wave is launched at her, this time from Komo'o. The blast is even more powerful than the first, and it sends Meteor flying into a rock pillar, ending her run in the battle. Rotom-Dex informs Ash that this was a Clanging Scales attack, a move unique to Komo'o. Ash can see that this totem is extremely powerful, and he knows he needs to do big damage. But for now, he needs to deal with Noivern. It's risky, but he sends out Lycanroc. The wolf's eyes shift into a dark red as she enters the battle, glaring angrily at both opponents. Noivern fires off an Air Slash, but Lycanroc dodges easily with her natural speed. She then hits the aerial beast with an Accelerock, knocking the bat off its course. Komo'o runs in to use Poison Jab, and Lycanroc tries to avoid the attack. But the massive Pokemon is exceedingly fast and lands a hard hit at Lycanroc's throat, sending her hurtling backward. The wolf slams into the ground in an intense pain. Ash and Pikachu call out to her, and she rises up to her feet, now looking even more furious than before. The Pokemon rushes forward without a command from her trainer. Ash tells her to be careful, but the Pokemon raises her paws into the air before slamming them into the ground. A flurry of giant rock shards rises from the ground, striking both Noivern and Komo'o. Noivern falls out of the sky, while Komo'o stumbles backward. Rotom-Dex informs Ash that Lycanroc must have just learned Stone Edge. Ash is thrilled by this and congratulates Lycanroc on her new move. Lycanroc happily wags her tail, but the celebration is short-lived, as Noivern begins firing off more Boom Burst attacks. Lycanroc dashes with a Accelerock to avoid the move, and this gives Ash an idea. He tells Lycanroc to jump above Noivern to a spot in the center of the battlefield. She does so, and this causes Noivern to follow it, launching its attack at the moving wolf. A Boom Burst is fired, but Ash has Lycanroc dodge, and the attack moves toward Komo'o. Rotom commends Ash on this brilliant idea, getting Noivern to attack its own totem leader. But the Soundwave simply brushes past Komo'o with the totem seemingly unharmed. Ash is confused by this before Rotom-Dex freaks out. Of course, this Como-O must have the ability Soundproof, making it immune to sound attacks. To make matters worse, Como-O is back at his feet, and he uses another strong Thunder Punch, dealing a major hit to Lycanroc. The Pokemon nearly topples over, but Ash tells her that he knows she can do this. Noivern uses Air Slash, but Ash tells Lycanroc to use Stone Edge around herself as a shield. She manages to do so, and this infuriates the totem. It runs in and uses Thunder Punch to begin shattering the rocks. Ash tells Lycanroc to stay put. The wolf nods, and eventually Como-O does destroy one of the rocks, exposing Lycanroc once more. But this is what Ash wanted. He tells Lycanroc to jump off of Como-O and use a Cell Rock on Noivern. The orange wolf successfully leaps up Como-O's arms to his head, using him as a springboard. Lycanroc then uses the momentum to launch herself at Noivern and strike a powerful, super effective attack. This takes Noivern out, much to Como-O's shock. Ash tells Lycanroc that he knew she could do it, and the Pokemon bounces around in glee. Unfortunately, this is once again cut short, as in the blink of an eye, Lycanroc takes a hard hit to the jaw and is flung into the canyon wall. The Pokemon is just barely able to react, as a follow-up Focus Blast from Como-O strikes, causing a huge explosion. Once the smoke clears, Lycanroc is knocked out. Ash recalls the Pokemon, thanking her for taking down Noivern. He then focuses his attention back on Como-O, and the now clear second ally Pokemon. Coming into clear view is a Scizor, angrily baring its claws at Ash and Lycanroc. Rotom-Dex says that it was a bullet punch that landed that first big hit on Lycanroc. Seeing Como-O's new helper Pokemon, Ash has only one choice for the battle, Torracat. He sends the small tiger Pokemon onto the field, and he ignites the bell collar on his neck, ready for an intense battle. Como-O goes in to use Poison Jab, while Scizor uses X-Scissor. Ash tells Torracat to use Flame Charge to dodge the attacks, and while he avoids Como-O's strike, Scizor is just too fast and lands the X-Scissor, though for minimal damage. Ash has Torracat fire off an Ember, but Torracat uses Light Screen to avoid taking too much damage from the fire attack. Ash knows that he can't let the Pokemon overpower Torracat, and he needs to think fast. While he's lost in thought, Como-O uses Clanging Scales this time, and the powerful blast sends Torracat flying. This allows Scizor to fly in and land a series of devastating bullet punches. Torracat takes a strong beating, but now that the bug is up close, Torracat fights through the pain to hit a devastating Fire Fang onto one of Scizor's claws, right as he lands a punch. Scizor screams out in pain, and Ash has Torracat follow up with a revenge attack to deal even more damage. Ash is happy to have gotten the upper hand, but it's only for a moment, as the totem rushes forward with Thunder Punch. Ash tells Torracat to intercept it with Flame Charge. The small cat does as he's told, and meets Como-O's electrified fist with his fiery tackle. Unfortunately, Como-O has the definite power advantage and pushes Torracat back easily. With his free hand, he uses a Poison Jab, smacking Torracat away and leaving him poisoned. Ash can't waste time now and has Torracat go in for another Fire Fang against Scizor. Thanks to the numerous Flame Charges speeding him up, he's able to run over to the bug before it can run away. Scizor uses X-Scissor to intercept the hit, using all of his might to push it back. Torracat roars loudly, and his body bursts into another Flame Charge, and he dives at Scizor, engulfing the Pokemon in flames, and finishing it off. Ash praises Torracat for the great work, but the Pokemon can't even celebrate, as he writhes in pain from the poison. Not wanting to miss an opportunity, Como-O uses Focus Blast, striking Torracat for a huge hit. The cat is launched into another nearby pillar, and it crumbles on top of him. Ash asks him if he's okay, and the Pokemon struggles to pull himself up. He glares angrily at Como-O, but his vision is blurred. The poison causes him even more distress, and he topples to the ground, unable to battle. Ash recalls Torracat, telling him he did great in taking down Scizor. Now, all they need to do is defeat the totem. Rotom-Dex is concerned though, since Ash's other Pokemon weren't able to do that much damage to Como-O, as they had to focus on his strong allies. His remaining Pokemon will have a lot of work to do. Ash sends out Pikachu, who was still a bit injured from his earlier battle, but ready to battle for his trainer. Ash starts by ordering Quick Attack. Pikachu rushes over and lands a noticeably hard hit to Como-o, actually causing it to stumble over. This surprises Ash, and he wants to keep up the pressure. He calls for a Thunderbolt, but Como-o blocks the attack with Thunder Punch. He then sends a Focus Blast Pikachu's way, but Pikachu slices the attack in half with Iron Tail. Ash realizes that he needs to finally slow this Pokemon down, so he has Pikachu fire off Electro Web. Como-o blasts the attack away with Focus Blast though, throwing Ash off. Como-o rushes forward with Poison Jab, and Ash gets a new idea. He has Pikachu use Quick Attack. However, right as the Pokemon get close, Ash tells Pikachu to run past Como-o. Trusting his trainer, Pikachu runs underneath the massive totem and rushes behind him. From here, Ash has Pikachu aim an Electro Web directly at Como-o's legs. The electric webbing manages to strike one of Como-o's legs, not only giving Como-o a noticeable jolt, but also causing him to stumble. Como-o tries to shake off the Electro Web, but is unable to do so. This infuriates him, and as Pikachu runs in with Iron Tail, Como-o lets loose a massive clanging scales. Pikachu tries to maintain his footing, but the attack is far too powerful, sending the small mouse flying. Pikachu is hurled into the air, but doesn't let this stop him from firing off a Thunderbolt. Como-o only takes minimal damage, however, and as Pikachu hits the ground, a Focus Blast collides with his exhausted body. He lands right in front of Ash, who immediately scoops up his fainted partner. Ash thanks Pikachu for the hard work, and allows him to sit by his side and rest. Ash is nervous about his next move, but Rotom-Dex approaches Ash, and his camera roll is on screen. He asks Ash if he's noticed an odd faint glow on Como-o each time it uses clanging scales. The living Pokédex had noticed it the first time, and decided to snap a few images to show the trainer. Ash says that he hadn't, but he can see it clear as day from the pictures, and asks Rotom if he knows what it might be. Rotom has concluded that Como-o's defenses seem to weaken whenever it uses this move. This explains why his Pokemon's physical attacks have been doing a lot of noticeable damage to the totem. From this, Ash feels a bit more confident that a strong hit might be able to help him win this. He reaches for the Great Ball on his belt and sends Tiny into the battle. The Passimian growls as his eyes meet the opposing totem Pokemon. Ash tells Tiny to use Close Combat, aiming for a big hit right off the bat. Tiny leaps up and dashes toward Como-o and unleashes a flurry of powerful punches. However, Como-o raises his arms in a defensive stance to block Tiny's attack. Tiny tries to break through and uses all of his might to deal as much damage as he can, but Como-o remains strong. That said, this time has given Ash the time to think of a new idea. He tells Tiny to stop his attack and go for a low sweep. Tiny drops to the ground and delivers a strong and powerful kick to Como-o's leg. The totem screams in pain, the physical attack dealing major damage thanks to his weakened defenses. That said, the close combat has weakened Tiny's defenses as well, and this is shown when a strong Thunder Punch slams Tiny into the ground. Electricity sparks around Tiny's body, but the Simian fights to his feet, unwilling to fall so soon. He then tosses his berry at the Como-o in a fling attack, but the fruit merely bounces off of the Pokemon's chest, seemingly having done almost no damage. Como-o raises his fist for a poison jab, but electricity sparks around his body and he becomes unable to move. From this, Ash calls for a rapid close combat, and Tiny leaps up to launch a series of powerful punches to Como-o's face before it can defend. Rotom-Dex says that it looks like Pikachu's last Thunderbolt must have paralyzed Como-o. Tiny uses as much of his power as he can and eventually manages to knock Como-o back. This is where Ash figures he needs to finish things and pulls out his Phytinium Z crystal. He tells Tiny that this is where it's time for them to land their final strike. Tiny agrees and prepares to get into position, but Ash and Tiny are both stunned when before they can even strike the pose for all-out pummeling, Como-o begins glowing a bright blue. It absorbs the Z crystal energy from the nearby pedestal and uses a special Z move, Clangorous Soul Blaze. Tiny can't even react as he's hit by the massive wave of energy and sent flying. Tiny slams into the canyon wall before falling to the ground. He's unconscious. Ash is stunned by this, before Rotom-Dex confirms that, indeed, the totem managed to use a Z move. Ash is surprised, since none of the previous totems ever used a Z move during his trials. He didn't even know wild Pokemon could use them on their own. but it seems that this is truly the strongest totem of all. Sorry about the crazy anime logic here, but come on, I could not have Komo show off its signature Z move in Ash's final totem battle. This is not good. Ash has no doubt Tiny could have finished things with his Z move, but his only remaining Pokemon is Jangmo-o, and Ash is nervous about her ability to take down the totem, mainly due to her lack of power compared to her evolution. That said, she's the only hope he has, and Ash has never let something like this stop him before, so he brings the tiny dragon onto the battlefield. As soon as Jangmo-o exits her Ultra Ball and makes eye contact with the totem, she cowers in fear. The small Pokemon is frozen, barely able to do anything. Komo senses the fear of the minuscule opponent and rushes in for his attack. Ash calls out to Jangmo-o, asking what's wrong. The Pokemon shrieks in terror and backs away. Komo hits a hard Thunder Punch, knocking Jangmo-o back into his arms. Ash asks the frightened creature what's wrong, and she explains everything. Rotomdex translates the little dragon's words, and it's clear now. This totem Komo is the one who hurt her and destroyed the woodland all the way back when Ash first met her. But why would the totem Pokemon have been all the way on the other side of Poni Island? Ash doesn't know, but there isn't time to ask questions right now. Now he needs to get through this battle. He tells Jangmo-o that he knows she's afraid, but he believes in her. She's now the only one who can win this. Determined to make her new trainer proud, Jangmo-o jumps back onto the field with a growl. Komo is unfazed by the small Pokemon and goes in for Poison Jab. Thankfully, the Pokemon isn't at full speed, thanks to being paralyzed, not to mention the effects of Pikachu's Electro Web and Tiny's Low Sweep. So Jangmo-o is able to dodge and hit with a Dragon Breath. Komo screams out in pain, but he's not out yet. He tries to land a Poison Jab, but Jangmo-o dodges every swing of his hand. Things are going well. Maybe Jangmo-o can win this. Ash calls for a Dual Chop, and Jangmo-o lunges in for the attack. But the totem musters all of its strength to use a powerful clanging scales. Jangmo-o is blasted backward into a pillar, which crumbles due to the contact. Ash and Pikachu call out to Jangmo-o, begging her to get back up. Jangmo-o tries to get back to her feet, desperate to win this for Ash, but she's struggling due to both fear and pain. Komo, seeing an opening, then launches a Focus Blast. Ash calls out to Jangmo-o, telling her that she's okay. Her bulletproof ability will shield her from this attack. At this, Jangmo-o rises to her feet, the scale on her head glowing a bright blue. The enormous Focus Blast collides with her. Though she works to push it back, she begins to struggle. Ash tells her that he knows she can do this. He believes in her. She's powerful. She can win this. And from there, Jangmo-o rises to her hind legs and lets out a loud roar. The blue light on her head completely envelops her. Suddenly, the Focus Blast explodes. Ash is concerned until the smoke clears. There, he sees it. Standing where Jangmo-o once stood, it's now Hakamo-o. Ash is thrilled and excited over this evolution and congratulates the newly evolved Pokemon. Hakamo-o looks back at Ash with a proud smile. She then stares down the totem, who looks shocked over the change in circumstances. Still, he rushes forward with a Thunder Punch. Hakamo-o then takes off with a Brick Break. Using her new speed, she manages to evade the Thunder Punch, then land a hard punch to the totem's face, and this causes him to flinch back in pain. Now is his chance. Ash tells Hakamo-o to put her full power into a Dual Chop. Hakamo-o leaps up, striking her ball form in the chest, knocking it back. Komo is stunned, but tries to execute his own attack. But Hakamo raises a fist, chopping Komo on the head with a second strike, causing it to topple to the ground. Defeated. Ash rushes over to hug Hakamo and is beyond grateful to her for the victory. Hakamo hugs Ash back, growling happily. The celebration is short-lived though, as Komo starts to come to. Ash doesn't know what to say, but it seems he doesn't have to say anything. Komo directs Ash to the pedestal behind him, so he walks over, and sitting at the top is Dragonium Z. Ash takes the item, his final Island Trial Z Crystal. He's beyond happy about it, but there's still something bothering him. He wants to know about what Hakamo said before, about Komo destroying that forest and injuring all those Pokemon. So he asks the Pokemon, what happened? Selene and Lillie stand at the Ruins of Hope, with Hapu. Lillie is nervous, especially considering that the last time they went to one of Alola's ruins, they were met with an Ultra Beast. Hapu tells the girls to look around for any trace of Tapu Fini. Lillie and Selene, however, see no signs of life whatsoever. Hapu finds this odd since usually there are at least some wild Pokemon lingering around, but none today. Still, they head into the ruins, hopeful that they'll come across the Island Guardian, but Tapu Fini is nowhere to be found. The girls wait around for a bit, but sadly it seems like it's not around. This upsets all of them, as they know the others are desperate for Tapu Fini to appoint a new kahuna. But at this point, it's clear that there's nothing they can do. But before they can even come up with a new plan, they hear a loud noise outside. That's odd, since there were no Pokemon in sight just a short while ago. The girls decide to head out, curious if Tapu Fini finally returned. However, they're all stunned when, instead of seeing the Island Guardian, they see a giant familiar vortex in the sky. Lillie panics. It's an ultra wormhole. That can only mean one thing. Within seconds, their eyes are met with Ultra Beasts, two of them, clashing at each other in a vicious brawl. However, Lillie actually recognizes them from research she came across at Aether Paradise. She can't recall much about them, aside from the fact that one was listed as Blaster and the other as Blade. This is like the situation at the Ruins of Abundance all over again, only twice as bad. But this time, it doesn't seem any Tapu is around to help them. Still, at least they have the granddaughter of a kahuna with them. Selene quickly explains to Hapu how she and Lillie had to deal with a situation like this previously. Hapu is stunned by this, but feels like they have no choice but to fight regardless. They need to protect the Island Guardian's home. She sends out her Mudsdale and Flygon, while Selene sends out Spike and Ariel. Meanwhile, Lillie sends out Sandy and Snowy. Blaster fires off what seems to be metal sound to disorient everyone. Meanwhile, Blade rushes forward and hits Smart Strike. From this, the girls deduce that these Ultra Beasts must be at least partially Steel type. As such, Hapu becomes confident. She orders her Mudsdale to use high horsepower against the smaller Ultra Beast. Despite its tiny size, it intercepts the hit with Leaf Blade. Mudsdale is hit hard, but manages to withstand the hit. Flygon then fires off a strong Fire Blast at Blaster, but it hits back with Flash Cannon. Selene tells Spike to use Flamethrower to help Flygon, and together they manage to push back hard enough that the beast is hit. It doesn't seem too phased, however, and uses Air Slash. Lillie has Sandy use Icicle Sphere, while Snowy goes for Blizzard to intercept the Air Slashes. They manage to partially do so, though one hit strikes Ariel, who was too slow to dodge. Selene calls out to her starter, who is shaken, but recovers. She then uses Water Pledge to surround the larger Ultra Beast. This causes it to struggle to fire off more attacks. Ariel lunges forward with Aqua Jet, but Blade quickly gets in front of her and hits a hard Leaf Blade. The little Brion is really hurt, so Selene sends out Honey to use Pollen Puff to help Brion recover her strength, and then sends out Peach as backup. Blaster then shocks everyone by propelling itself forward like a rocket, using a major double edge. With the sheer size of this creature, it's sure to deal massive damage should its attack land at full force. Selene has an idea though, and requests that they all work together to slow down the creature. Using a combined attack from all of their Pokemon, they manage to slow the Ultra Beast down, thus weakening the attack. Once it gets in close, Selene orders Spike to use Shell Trap. The Turtonator turns around and manages to withstand the double edge, and the Shell Trap causes a massive explosion, sending the monster back. The girls are excited until Blade swoops in and starts striking one Pokemon after another with Night Slash. They all try to strike back, but Blade is far too fast. Blade singles out Mudsdale and uses Leaf Blade on it again. But surprisingly, the Pokemon withstands the hit pretty well and hits a hard Mega Kick, flinging Blade backward. This allows Sandy to rush in and hit a hard Ice Ball attack. Blaster tries to disorient everyone with Metal Sound again, but this time, Flygon flies out of the way of the attack, then uses Fire Blast from behind to deal damage. Blade goes to use Smart Strike, and Lillie tries to have Snowy use Blizzard to hold it back. Blade simply spins around in order to gain momentum, then hits Snowy with a super effective attack. Sandy rushes over to help her, but Blaster aims a flash cannon at him. Sandy tries to use Gyro Ball to fight back, but he's struggling and gets blasted back into a pile of rocks. Lillie is horrified and rushes over to help the little sand shrew. As she goes in to pick him up, something falls from her bag. It's an ice stone. Lillie is unsure of where this item even came from, but before she can question it, Sandy weakly grabs onto the stone, and this causes him to evolve into Sandslash. Though confused, Lillie is happy by this, and she's even more excited when Sandy shows off a new move, Icicle Crash. Blade attempts to slice apart the giant icicles, but winds up being overpowered and knocked back. Blaster, however, goes in for another double edge. Hapu's Mudtail and Selene's Aerial, Peach, and Honey move in to hold it back, though they struggle, and they are all hit back themselves, crashing into a nearby pillar. Hapu is terrified upon seeing the damage to the sacred location, fearing Tapu Fini's reaction. She yells out to the Ultra Beasts that she won't allow them to continue to run rampant in this space. She tells the others that they should use their Z moves to use a massive attack. The other girls agree, but Selene has a plan. Instead of using all of their Z moves at once, they should use them in combination with other attacks, and Hapu agrees. First, Selene inserts her Buginium Z onto her Z-Ring and has Honey use Savage Spin Out, and even though it isn't very effective, it binds the Ultra Beasts. Blaster is only able to be partially bound, but is still prevented from attacking. Even Blade, who is completely trapped, struggles to slice the extremely thick webbing. This allows Mudtail to hit the cocoon-covered monster with a hard Mega Kick. Meanwhile, Blaster is hit in the face with Spike's Flamethrower. Blade begins to tear through the threads, and this is when Honey finishes her attack and slams both beasts into the ground. The Ultra Beasts are disoriented by this attack, causing Blaster to aimlessly launch a flash cannon, which fails to hit the Pokemon, but nearly strikes the ruins, though Aerial creates a bubble to block it. Lillie is up next, and she takes out the Stellium Z Gladion had given her, and has Sandy use Corkscrew Crash. The Sandslash rushes forward, coated in steel covering. Meanwhile, Selene has Aerial use Bubble Beam to surround the Pokemon, making it an even more powerful combination attack. Blaster attempts to intercept this with Air Slash, but Sandy powers through. The Ultra Beast switches to Metal Sound, and this managed to hold Sandy back. But the entire attack was simply to distract Blaster, while Flygon and Spike managed to get behind the beast and hit it with Flamethrower and Fire Blast. This causes Blaster to lose focus, so Sandy can land his attack, knocking Blaster down. Blade flies towards Snowy, aiming a Smart Strike. The Ninetales uses a bunch of Moonblasts to knock it away, but the Pokemon is far too agile and dodges the attacks. So Selene has Aerial use Water Pledge to surround Blade, disorienting it, allowing Snowy to freeze the water pillars with Blizzard. With Blade trapped, Hapu sees this as her chance. She proclaims her resolve to protect the Ruins of Hope, and tells her Mudsdale that it's time to finish things. She has Mudsdale use Tectonic Rage. With Blade frozen solid, it's powerless to defend itself from the Z move. The massive attack deals a hard hit to Blade, finally knocking it out. Meanwhile, Blaster tries a last-ditch double edge, but Spike and Flygon combine their attacks once more. Spike uses Focus Blast, while Flygon uses Draco Meteor, and the massive combo attack is able to overpower Blaster and defeat it. Hapu, Selene, and Lillie are overjoyed, and as expected, an Ultra Wormhole opens up in the sky, dragging the beasts back within. Lillie is still concerned over the fact that these Ultra Beasts continue to pop up all across the region, and vows to put a stop to this. Selene agrees, especially knowing that Team Skull is also partially behind this. Hapu also states that she'll talk to the Kahunas about this, but for now, she's happy that they were able to save the ruins. Then, suddenly, a pink mist covers the area. The girls are frightened that it may be another dangerous creature, but soon the source of the mist reveals itself. It's the Island Guardian, Tapu Fini. Hapu is stunned to see it there and apologizes for not doing a better job at protecting the Ruins of Hope. Selene and Lillie vouch for her though, telling the Island Guardian that Hapu did her best to fend the area from those Ultra Beasts and was the one to be able to finish them off in the end. Tapu Fini pauses for a moment, then approaches Hapu. Without a word, she then heads into the Ruins of Hope, beckoning Hapu to follow. Hapu does so, with Lillie and Selene nervous, but they slowly follow behind. Within the ruins, Water is shooting up in bursts like a series of geysers as Tapu Fini performs a ritual resembling Z move poses. All three girls are confused, but Hapu in particular feels compelled to join in, mimicking Tapu Fini's movements. After doing this, Tapu Fini gives her a new Z ring, a Z power ring, similar to that of the other kahunas. Hapu is in shock as she realizes that Tapu Fini has just chosen her as the newest kahuna of Poni Island. Selene and Lillie are surprised, but congratulate her, stating that she's most fitting for this position. Hapu tells Tapu Fini that she'll work hard to make her proud of her and live up to her grandfather's legacy. Tapu Fini gives her a nod, then leaves the ruins. Selene and Lillie are incredibly happy, and Hapu tells them that she already knows her first mission as the new island kahuna, to face Ash and Hau in their grand trials. Meanwhile, Lillie still can't help but wonder, where on earth did that ice stone come from? Back on Executor Island, Hau stands in the center of the vast open space. The trial captains were kind enough to give him some potions to heal up his team. Now it's time for the real challenge, his final totem battle. The flower petals are tossed into the air, and from there, a calming scent permeates the area. Hau is initially distracted by this, but he quickly becomes serious when he hears a loud buzzing sound. After looking around, a totem Rabambi flies aggressively toward him. The boy notices how this giant Rabambi looks far more frightening than Selene's, especially with its golden totem aura. All the trial captains are curious to see how this battle goes, particularly Kiawe, Mallow, and Sophocles, who witnessed Hau battling previous totems up close. Hau thinks he has the slight advantage since he knows a little bit about how Rabambi battles, so he sends out Vaporeon first. Lana is interested in seeing Pokemon face the totem. Hau has Vaporeon start with Water Pulse, but Rabambi effortlessly blasts the attack away with Dazzling Gleam. Hau tries to switch to a close-ranged fight and calls for Aqua Tail, but Rabambi counters with Draining Kiss. Vaporeon's hit lands, but Rabambi recovers her strength back right away thanks to Draining Kiss. Hau commands a rapid-fire Shadow Ball Barrage, and thanks to the sheer amount of the attacks being fired, Rabambi is hit quite a bit. In an effort to regain control, Rabambi uses Quiver Dance. This allows her to not only power herself up, but to get a strong speed advantage. She can now quickly evade all of Vaporeon's attacks. She fires off a massive Bug Buzz, which Vaporeon only just dodges with Dig. But the Bug Buzz is far too powerful now, and Vaporeon is forcefully unearthed and sent flying. Things are clearly not in Hau's favor, so he recalls Vaporeon, and Komala is sent out in her place. This surprises the trial captains, who didn't expect a Pokemon swap so soon, but they're eager to see what Hau will do next. Right away, he commands Slam, but Rabambi blocks the attack with her wing and strikes back with Dazzling Gleam. Komala is knocked back hard, but gets back to his feet quickly enough. Hau makes a call for Shadow Claw, but Rabambi uses Quiver Dance, giving herself another speed and power boost. As such, she's easily able to dodge Komala's shadowy attack and hit Bug Buzz. Komala is dazed, but still standing. Hau decides to try something different and has Komala run at Rabambi. The totem rushes in, but just before they collide, Hau has Komala jump onto Rabambi's back. Ilima is impressed by the Pokemon's nimble movements. Rabambi tries to shake the small nuisance off, but he manages to bash her in the head with his log pillow to hit a slam attack. Hau thinks he's finally getting the upper hand, but this feeling is quickly destroyed as a blast of water strikes Komala and knocks him off Rabambi. Hau looks over to see a Pelipper flying in the air, clearly the totem's ally. With Komala already struggling a bit and Hau not wanting to take any risks here, he recalls Komala for Raichu. Sophocles is eager to see the electric-type battle. It also starts to rain, thanks to Pelipper's Drizzle ability. Rabambi pursues Raichu immediately, but the surfing rodent actually manages to match the totem in speed, despite the Quiver Dance and the rain which is obscuring her vision. Pelipper uses Seed Bomb, but Raichu avoids those hits as well. She then flies right up to Pelipper and uses a strong Thunder, dealing a major hit to the ally Pokemon. Rabambi goes for Bug Buzz, but Hau has Raichu dodge, and Rabambi ends up hitting her own ally Pokemon, though not for much damage. The trial captains are impressed by Raichu's natural speed. Pelipper uses Stockpile in an effort to raise its own defenses, while Rabambi uses Draining Kiss. She lands a hit, and manages to recover her health, But Hao doesn't let this distract him, and he calls for Psyshock. Raichu fires the beam of psychic energy at Pelipper, but he manages to hang on. He then uses a powerful Scald, dealing a stronger hit, thanks to the rain. Ribombee uses Bug Buzz for a big hit, but Raichu uses all of her energy to push back with Discharge, striking both opponents and taking down Pelipper. The captains are amazed with Hao's battling and how he fainted a totem ally so quickly. Ribombee, on the other hand, is furious at her ally going down and hits Dazzling Gleam. Raichu is blasted back hard, so Hao recalls the Pokemon for Dartrix as the weather clears up. Mina is impressed with Hao's strategy. Seems he wants to avoid any of his Pokemon going down in battle. This is where Sophocles remembers the self-imposed challenge Hao and Ash created when battling the Hokulani Observatory Totems. Hao wasn't able to pass that challenge, but maybe he wants to make up for it here. Ribombee goes for Draining Kiss, and Dartrix meets it with a Steel Wing. The super effective attack leaves Ribombee shrieking in pain, so Dartrix lands another one. Acerola comments how perfect it was that Dartrix learned a Steel-type move just before this totem battle. A close-range Bug Buzz lands a strong counterattack, but it's not enough to faint Hao's starter. Dartrix glares at Ribombee, then his trainer, beckoning him to command a particular attack. Hao can see what Dartrix wants right away and commands Brave Bird. The owl rushes in for the attack, but Ribombee tries to use Dazzling Gleam to push Dartrix back. Dartrix is starting to lose momentum, so Hao calls for a speedy Razor Leaf. The sharp blades pierce Ribombee in the chest, breaking her out of her attack. This allows Dartrix to strike with a powerful Brave Bird, sending Ribombee to the ground. Hao thinks he's in a great position and tells Dartrix to use a continuous Razor Leaf barrage. Sharp leaves rain down on Ribombee. Dartrix prepares to use Steel Wing, but he's blasted away by a powerful Dazzling Gleam. Hao is surprised, but instantly assumes it's another ally Pokemon, and he turns out to be right. This time, a Blissey bounds over to the totem Ribombee and begins using Heal Pulse on her. Not good, Hao thinks. He can't afford for the totem to have a way to recover its health. It's incredibly risky, but he thinks of a strategy. As he's thinking, Blissey uses Dazzling Gleam, but Dartrix surrounds himself with Grass Pledge as a barrier, a move which impresses Mallow. This allows Dartrix to be safely recalled, and Raichu returns to the field. Ribombee and Blissey aim Dazzling Gleam, but Raichu hastily dodges. Hao only needs one thing from her. Thanks to her quiver dances, Hao is certain that Ribombee is fast enough to avoid Raichu's attacks, so he calls for Raichu's newest move, Electric Terrain. Raichu executes the move, which allows her Surfer ability to activate. The trial captains are surprised that Hao kept that move a surprise for so long. Raichu was already pretty speedy, but now she's moving so fast it looks like she's using Teleport. Ribombee and Blissey can't keep up, so Raichu uses another Discharge, hitting both opponents with shockingly hard hits, and paralyzing Ribombee. Angered by this, Blissey starts using Helping Hand to assist the totem. Meanwhile, Hao recalls Raichu for Crabrawler. Despite the disadvantage he's in, Crabrawler doesn't back down from the battle. Immediately at Hao's command, he launches a Bubble Beam, but Blissey uses a Light Screen to protect herself and her leader from taking a lot of damage. Totem Ribombee then prepares Bug Buzz. It's more powerful thanks to Helping Hand, but the paralysis slows her execution of the move. Crabrawler is hurt, but works to fight through the move. He quickly rushes in when paralysis racks Ribombee's body to land a Dizzy Punch. The hard hit strikes, dealing a hard hit and rendering Ribombee confused. With this, the tide is now turned closer in Hao's favor despite the type disadvantage. Blissey is now on her own and attacks with another Dazzling Gleam. Crabrawler is hit hard, but fights through the pain to land a monstrous Dynamic Punch. Miraculously though, Blissey manages to get back up. Hao is impressed, and Mina pipes in that Blissey are notoriously difficult to knock out. But Hao can tell that one more strong attack should be able to take her down, so he calls for Drain Punch. The confused Ribombee is struggling to land any attacks, and Blissey sees this, so with her last bit of strength, she uses Heal Pulse on Ribombee. Her attack is used, giving Ribombee more energy, and she's struck with the Drain Punch, finishing her off. Hao is thrilled by this, but Ribombee seems to have shaken off her confusion, so she goes in for Draining Kiss, dealing even more damage and allowing herself to recover more health. Her brother is nearly out, so Hao recalls him and sends in Crystal, ready to finish things. Ribombee is furious over her allies being taken down, and in a rage, she uses an extremely powerful bug buzz. Crystal completely resists it, however, and hits back with a hard flame wheel for big damage. The totem tries to use Dazzling Gleam, but electricity surges through her body from paralysis, slowing her down. So Crystal goes in for Shadow Bone, another hard hit. At this point, Hao feels like he's got this in the bag, so he takes out a Z Crystal and tells his Pokemon that it's time to bring this battle to a close. Hao and Crystal pose together to unleash a specific Z move for the first time. It's Inferno Overdrive, something which impresses Kiawe. Crystal begins dancing with her bone to create a massive ball of blue flames. She then fires the attack at Ribombee. The Pokemon tries to fly away, but she can't move as fast thanks to the paralysis. As such, she has no choice but to use Quiver Dance as she's hit by the powerful blast. Ribombee is engulfed in cerulean flames, and Hao thinks that he's got this battle won. Though once the smoke clears, it turns out that amazingly, Ribombee managed to pull through, but she's incredibly weakened. She fires off a huge bug buzz, and this has the force to blast Crystal backward, but she's still able to withstand the hit. Ribombee prepares Dazzling Gleam, but Hao tells Crystal to throw her bone at Ribombee's wings. She does so, and the hard strike manages to knock Ribombee out of the air. As Ribombee falls, Crystal begins charging forward. She meets Ribombee with a powerful Iron Head to the bug's chest, causing her to fly back and slam into the ground. The totem tries to get back up, but she's taken far too much damage. She falls over, and with that, the totem battle is over. Hao is ecstatic, and he rushes over to hug Crystal. The Marowak returns her trainer's hug and is happy to have been able to best the totem for him. Mina is beyond pleased with Hao's battling for both the trial and the totem battle. In particular, the fact that he was able to lose without losing a single Pokemon was impressive. Hao said that he'd hoped he'd be able to do so this time and is happy his team pulled through. In an unexpected twist, Mina, in addition to giving him a Ferium Z, also gives him a Z Power Ring. This shocks Hao, as Mina hadn't even mentioned this being a possible reward for him. Mina explains that it was actually Nanu who advised her to give this to Hao, should he show promise during his totem battle, and she feels that he certainly has. Hao is thrilled to finally have his own Z Power Ring, even though he doesn't have any special Z Crystals to use with it. But this is when Sophocles pops in and hands him Raichuium Z. He says that Hao's Raichu was extremely proficient in her battles, especially using her ability to turn the tide of the battle, and he thinks that she'd use the special Z move Stoked Spark Surfer really well, but she needs to know the move Thunderbolt in order to use it. Hao is overjoyed and thanks the two profusely. He can't wait to tell the others about all of this. With Hao's final trial concluded, he and the trial captains prepare to head back to Seafolk Village. The trainers reunite and tell each other about their day's events. Selene, Lillie, and Hao are in awe to hear about Ash's experience with Totem Kommo-o, particularly Jangmo-o's evolution. But hearing what happened after the battle is what intrigues them the most. With translations from Rotomdex, Ash learned that Kommo-o's destruction of the forest was not intentional. It was trying to save the location from being attacked by enemy creatures, and the pursuit led him all across the island. However, the ensuing battle led to a lot of destruction and innocent Pokemon being hurt. Even Kommo-o himself was so badly hurt that he had to retreat into a cave in the far depths of the vast Poni Canyon for a long time, explaining his absence. Selene and Lillie are curious if those enemy Pokemon were Ultra Beasts, and this leads into them going over their experience at the Ruins of Hope, with two Ultra Beasts attacking them. The situation was terrifying, but it also led to Hapu being chosen as the next Kahuna and getting a special Z Power Ring from Tapu Fini, so it wasn't all bad. This leads to Hao proudly showing off the Z Power Ring he got from Mina after completing her trial. He's happy to now be back on par with Ash. Ash, Selene, and Lillie are happy to hear this, and this just makes Ash even more excited for their final Kahuna battles. On that note, Ash and Hao contact Hapu, who agrees to battle them the following day. But before we get to that, I need to throw in a Pikachu short. Yes, a random Pikachu short in the middle of the saga. Listen, y'all, it'll all make sense soon. This will be called Pikachu's Snowy Adventure, and I can't believe that name wasn't taken. And it'll be set on Mount Lanakila, Here, the group's Pokemon play in the snow and meet a shiny Drampa who is being bullied by ice types. Here, How's Crabrawler gains a protector role and wants to help protect the Drampa. Crabrawler and the others help take on the bullies, but they start to become overwhelmed. But in his desire to protect his friends and Drampa, he evolves into Crabominable, gaining the strength to defeat the enemy Ice-type Pokemon. The day is saved, and at the end of the short, Hao is shocked, yet pleased to see his Pokemon's new evolution. Okay guys, I'm so sorry for having to place an evolution in a random Pikachu short, but I really had no other place to put this. I blame myself for largely writing the script out of order, but also not planning out the travel route better, and trying to fit so much stuff into the Ula Saga. I hope this isn't the worst thing ever, but location and item-based evolutions are such a struggle. Anyway, back to the show. Everyone has now gathered at the Ruins of Hope. Ash, Lillie, and Selene sit on the sidelines as Hao stands across from Hapu. It's time for his final Kahuna battle. He thinks back to when he first battled his grandfather in his first Kahuna battle. Back then, he borrowed Pokemon from Selene in order to win. Now, he's got his own full team of Pokemon that he's raised well. His Pokemon have become so much stronger since his first Kahuna battle, and now he'll show everyone how far he's come and have a final Island Challenge battle that he can surely be proud of. Hapu tells Hao that she's heard great things about him from Hala and is glad that he'll be her first opponent as the newest Kahuna of Poni Island. She wants Tapu Fini to know that she made the right choice in appointing her. She tells Hao to get ready because this battle will be a full 6-on-6 battle. Hapu starts sending out her strong Golurk. Hao is immediately intimidated but decides to send out Dartrix to start things off. Hao has Dartrix start with Grass Pledge. Golurk is surrounded by a pillar of leaf tornadoes and takes a bit of damage, but Hapu calls for Phantom Force. In an instant, Golurk vanishes in a ghostly void and out of the way of the attack. Dartrix is stunned but barely has time to react before Golurk delivers a ghostly punch to the bird. Hao asks Dartrix if he's okay, and he nods, but it's only for a few moments as Golurk hits Fire Punch. This throws Hao off, not expecting a fire-type move. Dartrix gets back up and goes in with a few Steel Wings, but Golurk seems totally unfazed. Hapu commands Phantom Force again. Hao panics for a second, but soon relaxes and thinks of an idea. He tells Dartrix to surround himself with a massive Grass Pledge barrier, then spin and launch a barrage of Razor Leaves. Dartrix does as instructed, and Golurk is unable to move forward with his attack. Upon exiting the shadows, he's struck with several hard Razor Leaves. Golurk goes for Heavy Slam next, but Dartrix pushes him back with Grass Pledge. Things are looking well for Hao right now, but Hapu is done playing games. She has Golurk take flight and push through the attack. The giant behemoth manages to power through the Grass Pledge, then slam into Dartrix, knocking him back. From there, Fire Punch does another powerful hit, inflicting a painful burn onto Dartrix. Hao doesn't want to risk his partner too much, so he recalls Dartrix and shocks everyone by sending in Raichu. Hapu is confused by this choice, since both of Raichu's types are weak to Golurks, but she still doesn't let her guard down, just in case. She commands Golurk to use High Horsepower. Golurk rushes in, but Raichu quickly dodges out of the way. Golurk tries to pursue Raichu, but she's just too fast. Hapu is impressed with her incredible speed, but says it won't be enough. She then commands Phantom Force. Golurk vanishes, throwing Raichu off. The others are worried, but Hao remains confident. He tells Raichu to use her psychic powers to determine where Golurk is coming from. This surprises Hapu, and indeed, Raichu manages to sense Golurk right before it reappears, and she dodges the hit. She then hits a powerful Side Shock from behind, defeating Golurk. Hapu is impressed by Hao's strategy of using Dartrix and Raichu's teamwork to take down Golurk. But this battle is only just getting started. She sends out her Gastrodon next. Hao is confused by this choice, as Gastrodon is even less mobile than Golurk. Even with a type disadvantage, Raichu should be able to handle this Pokemon easily. So Hao calls for Side Shock. Gastrodon takes the hit, but surprisingly it doesn't seem all too injured. Hapu calls for a sludge wave, but Raichu dodges the hit easily. Still, Hapu tells Gastrodon to continue, confusing Hao. Hao tells Raichu to use Discharge, simply to intercept the sludge wave attacks, which works. However, this distracts Raichu from Gastrodon creating a massive muddy water attack. The giant wave heads toward Raichu, but Hao is unfazed and tells Raichu to surf the wave just like she did when battling Lana's Araquanid. Raichu does so, avoiding all damage. But once again, this attack was just bait. Gastrodon then bursts out of the wave and hits Raichu with a point-blank ice beam. The attack freezes much of Raichu's body, causing her to stumble and crash in the midst of the muddy water. Hao is confused because he can't even see where Raichu is. And this is exactly what Hapu wanted. She calls for Mud Bomb. Hao tries to command Raichu to dodge despite not being able to see her, but it's to no avail. As Raichu is struggling to even move with her partially frozen body, she becomes fully submerged in the water. From there, a flurry of mud bombs strikes, as she can do nothing to defend from the onslaught of attacks. Hao calls out to Raichu. However, as the muddy water disperses, Raichu is shown to have been knocked out. Hao recalls her and thanks her for taking out Golurk earlier. Lillie is amazed by Hapu's battling and says that Hao needs to stay alert. Hao then sends out Komala. Hapu heard from Mina how strong Hao's Komala is, so she doesn't approach the Pokemon lightly. Right away, she orders Ice Beam, striking Komala for a big hit. Hao commands Shadow Claw, and Komala shows off his speed by dashing over to land the attack. But just like with the previous attack, Gastrodon seems barely phased. Selene says that the Pokemon's defenses are quite impressive. Now that he's up close, Gastrodon can easily hit Komala with a Sludge Wave. The move deals heavy damage to the small koala. This unnerves Hao, and Ash tells him to be careful. Hao asks his Pokemon if he's okay, but the drowsy Pokemon doesn't do too much aside from give a weak nod. Hao knows he needs to be extra careful, so he tries to end the battle quickly. He orders Komala to use Slam, and while Komala lands the hit, Gastrodon's sludgy body absorbs most of the attack. Hao was really concerned. None of Komala's moves seem to be doing much of anything. Hapu says that her Gastrodon is one of her most defensive Pokemon, and won't go down easily. She calls for Mud Bomb, but Hao has Komala deflect the attack with his Log Pillow. And while this works, Komala is still struggling. Hao tries to think of something, but Hapu says she's ready to finish things, and orders Muddy Water. The massive wave is launched, and Hao panics. But to his surprise, Komala's Log Pillow actually floats, and Komala is able to stay above the water. Hapu isn't worried though, and she tells Gastrodon to ride the waves and use Mud Bomb up close. Gastrodon emerges from the water as she prepares her attack, and this is where Hao feels he has no choice but to use his secret weapon. He orders Komala to use Wood Hammer directly at Gastrodon's head. Komala spins around to gain some momentum before leaping forward and slamming his Log Pillow into Gastrodon, knocking it off balance and sending it hurtling into the ground. Hapu was thrown off as she didn't expect this. As Gastrodon falls and the muddy water disperses, Hao calls for a quick flail attack. Komala rushes forward toward the slug creature and manages to deal a mighty punch to her before she can even react to what's happening. Gastrodon is shown to be unable to battle after slamming onto her back in the center of the battlefield. Hao's friends cheer for him, and Hao is happy to have gotten another win. But Komala is running out of energy, and Hapu can see this, and she certainly isn't about to let up, sending out a Garchomp next. This intimidates Hao, but he tries not to let this faze him, and he tells Komala to use Slam. Komala runs over, but he's becoming exhausted, causing him to stumble as he runs. Hapu tells Garchomp to use Dragon Rush. Garchomp lunges forward at jet speed, flinging Komala into the air. Then, without missing a beat, Hapu orders a powerful Dragon Claw. Hao tries to have Komala meet it with Wood Hammer. The attacks collide, but at this point, Komala doesn't have the strength left to hold on. Dragon Claw overpowers him and lands a powerful hit, which finishes Komala off. Hao recalls the small Pokemon, pleased with his results in taking down Gastrodon. Garchomp is clearly a powerful opponent, but he now has a perfect counter against it. He then sends out his newly evolved Crabominable, impressing all of his friends, who are excited to see the Pokemon battle in this new form. Once again, Hapu seems unfazed by any type disadvantages. She tells Garchomp to use Fire Fang, and the Pokemon rushes in with the attack. The shark chomps down on one of Crabominable's claws, bursting into flames. But Crabominable shows off a new level of his signature endurance in his now evolved state and manages to hold Garchomp back. At How's command, he then hits a massive Ice Punch attack with his free hand. Garchomp takes a big hit, but remains steady, impressing all the kids. Lillie tells How that he needs to remain cautious, and he agrees. He orders Dynamic Punch, but Garchomp is quick enough to dodge and hit numerous Dragon Claw attacks. Crabominable tries to land a hit, but Garchomp is far too agile. She hits another Fire Fang, inflicting a powerful burn. Crabominable does fight through the pain and manages to land another Ice Punch, with Garchomp so close. But due to his burn, the attack doesn't do as much damage, allowing Garchomp to hang on and lunge forward with another Dragon Rush. How tries to get Crabominable to dodge, but the Pokemon is far too slow in comparison to his opponent and is launched backward by the hit. From here, Hapu is in complete control. She tells Garchomp to use Stomping Tantrum, and she begins launching a flurry of shards from the earth at Crabominable. He takes a lot of hard hits and becomes overwhelmed, especially as he continues to be hurt by the burn. This really stresses How out, as he struggles to see a way out of this. Selene tries to encourage him, but he barely even hears her in his distress. He wonders how he can get out of this. Then he remembers that he needs to focus on his Pokemon. He comes up with the idea to have Crabominable use Power-Up Punch on the debris to start increasing his strength. This works, and some of the chunks of dirt even manage to hit Garchomp back. Then How tells Crabominable to punch the ground to create a small shockwave. This manages to knock Garchomp off balance, and Crabominable can then fire off a huge Bubble Beam barrage. Hapu is impressed by this, but knows that Garchomp can power past this. The Kahuna tells Garchomp to take to the skies. Garchomp begins flying around, then dives down to hit several Dragon Claw and Fire Fang attacks from the air. Crabominable takes a lot of hard hits, but he also manages to wait until a precise moment to hit a strong Power-Up Punch, knocking Garchomp off course. Crabominable uses Bubble Beam, but Garchomp blocks the attacks with her fins. Crabominable continues to launch the attack, but his burn ignites his body and causes him to lose focus and stumble. The large crab is breathing heavily, and it looks like he's on the verge of fainting. Hapu sees this as her chance and orders Garchomp to end things with Dragon Rush. The massive shark leaps into the air, then uses her downward momentum to dive down for a massive attack. She looks like a glowing blue meteor, hurling herself at Crabominable. Though the crab is weak, he digs his feet into the ground and raises his claws up as a defensive barrier. Crabominable tries to hold Garchomp back, but struggles. The burn is causing him extreme pain, and Garchomp is starting to push him back. Ash, Selene, Lillie, and How call out to Crabominable in encouragement, and How tells him that he knows he can win. Hearing his trainer's words, the giant crab roars loudly, then manages to launch one of its ice-coated pincers off like a rocket at point-blank range, sending Garchomp flying. Everyone is shocked by this, but Crabominable proceeds to do the same thing with its second pincer, this time as a Dynamic Punch. The giant meaty claw collides with Garchomp like a bomb, creating a massive explosion. The shark's body limply falls to the ground, creating a huge crater in the center of the battlefield. Hapu calls out to her land shark, and though she tries to get up, she quickly falls back down to the ground in defeat. Everyone is utterly confused by what just happened, but Rotundex explains that this is a natural ability Crabominable have. In times of desperation, it can fire its pincers like rockets for massive damage. How is amazed by this ability, which he didn't even know Crabominable had. Hapu was also unaware of this and is impressed. She applauds How in being able to take down half her team, but she says that this battle is far from over. Her next Pokemon is a perfect counter to Crabominable. It's a Camerupt. The Pokemon's back erupts into flames as soon as it enters the battlefield. How is certain that Crabominable won't be able to overpower the fire type at this point, so he recalls the Pokemon and sends in Vaporeon. Hapu is impressed at How's willingness to keep up the type advantage in this battle, but she isn't concerned. She orders Eruption from her Pokemon, and the Camel executes the attack with an extreme power. How tells Vaporeon to counter with Water Pulse, but shockingly, the Blast of Fire manages to destroy the ball of water and land a hit on Vaporeon. Selene is stunned by how powerful Camerupt is, able to effortlessly counter a water-type attack. But Hao doesn't let this stop him, and he commands Aqua Tail. Vaporeon rushes forward, but Hapu doesn't let up and orders Sunny Day. Camerupt uses the attack right before Vaporeon is able to land her attack, and while Camerupt is hit, it doesn't take as much damage due to the sun. It then follows up with a close-range Solar Beam, dealing a massive hit to Vaporeon. Hao is concerned now. He thought he had a perfect counter to Camerupt, but it seems like he's the one being backed into a corner. Camerupt uses Eruption once more, but Vaporeon dodges with Dig. She emerges from the ground behind Camerupt and hits a Water Pulse, but once again, Camerupt is able to handle the hit well. It then uses Stomping Tantrum, knocking Vaporeon back. Lillie points out how the Stomping Tantrum did so much damage due to Camerupt missing her prior attack. Ash is amazed by Hapu's battling style, and this has him somewhat concerned about his own battle, but he focuses on Hao and encourages him to do well. Vaporeon struggles back to her feet and uses Shadow Ball, but once again, Camerupt overpowers her as a Solar Beam blasts straight through the ghostly orb, slamming into Vaporeon. Hapu tells Hao that she's trained her Camerupt to be able to easily take down water types, so he'd best give up now. She orders another eruption, which completely overwhelms Vaporeon. The catfish is fully engulfed in flames, and her body is burning up. Hao tells Vaporeon that he knows she can pull through this. Vaporeon looks back to her trainer in concern, not wanting to lose this for him. She then uses her heated energy around her and shoots a powerful blast of water at her opponent, knocking Camerupt onto her side. The others are shocked by this, as Rotomdex identifies this as Scald. Hao is amazed by the new move, but knows that the battle isn't over yet. He tells Vaporeon to use Dig, and she rushes underground right away. Hapu tells Camerupt to use Stomping Tantrum to coax Vaporeon back above ground, but this is when Hao tells Vaporeon to use Scald from underground. She's able to launch a powerful blast of water right underneath Camerupt, sending her flying. Vaporeon emerges, and Hao tells her to finish things with Aqua Tail. Hapu tells Camerupt to use Solar Beam, but right as she starts charging the attack, the sunlight fades away. Hao tells Vaporeon to hurry, and Hapu likewise tells Camerupt to speed up her attack as well. As soon as the Pokemon are right in front of each other, their attacks land, causing a huge explosion. Everyone's eyes are glued on the battle, curious to see what the results will be. Once the smoke clears, surprisingly, both Pokemon are still standing, breathing heavily. Camerupt takes a step forward, but she soon topples over, unable to battle. Vaporeon is clearly hurt, but still standing. Selene is impressed with the willpower of Hao's Pokemon, but notes how Habu is wearing all of his Pokemon down. Lillie hopes that Hao will keep this in mind. Said trainer actually attempts to recall Vaporeon to get some rest, but the Pokemon actually refuses. She wants to keep battling for her trainer. Hao isn't too sure about this, but decides to allow Vaporeon to remain in the battle. Habu then sends out her Steelix. Hao becomes a bit more confident, since Vaporeon still has a clear advantage here. He commands Scald, but Habu has Steelix use Gyro Ball to deflect the attack. It then uses Bulldoze, slamming its tail onto the ground and sending Vaporeon flying through the air. The Pokemon painfully lands on the ground and tries to get up. Hao asks if she's okay and she nods, so Hao orders Dig, but Steelix avoids the hit with Magnet Rise, stunning Hao. Steelix then lunges forward toward Vaporeon and lands a powerful Thunder Fang, finishing off the exhausted Pokemon. Hao recalls the Pokemon, satisfied over her performance in the battle. He's confident though, as he still has 3 Pokemon to Hapu's 2. He's certain he can win this and earn his final Z Crystal and Stamp. The matchup isn't the best, but he sends out Crystal regardless. The Marowak begins dancing happily as soon as she enters the battlefield. Hapu orders Bulldoze right off the bat, and the Shockwave hurls Crystal backward. She gets back up and uses Shadow Bone, though Steelix is able to intercept this hit with Gyro Ball and push Crystal away once more. Since Crystal is a close-range fighter, he can't allow Steelix to keep her at bay. Hao thinks up a strategy to land a hit and orders Crystal to use Bone Meringue. She tosses her bone at Steelix, but it avoids the hit with Magnet Rise. Hapu calls Hao out on forgetting this, but in fact, the attack was simply a diversion, allowing Crystal to charge up and land a hard Flame Wheel, while Steelix was avoiding the other attack. The massive Pokemon takes a huge hit, but lunges in to grab the Marowak with Thunder Fang. Crystal is hurt by the shockingly painful attack, but now that she's up close, she fights through the pain to land Shadow Bone. This causes Steelix to release her grip on Crystal, and Hao calls for another Flame Wheel. Steelix uses Bulldoze, but Hao is prepared this time, and has Crystal use the momentum to jump up high and slam Steelix with Iron Head. Steelix is dazed, and this is when the effects of Magnet Rise begin to wear off. Hapu tells her Pokemon to use the move again, but he flinches in pain from the previous attack. This allows Crystal to finally land a powerful Bone Mowing attack, dealing 2 big hits to her opponent. Ash and the others are pleased to see Hao turning things around, but Hapu still tries to throw him off by having Steelix use Gyro Ball. Hao decides to have Crystal intercept with Flame Wheel. Steelix of course has the size advantage here, but Crystal has the edge in terms of typing. The Pokemon push forward, each trying to overpower the other, and they end up sending each other flying back into the opposing rock pillars, destroying them. Everyone is shocked by this, and is determined that both Pokemon have been knocked out. Even Hao is surprised by this, but he recalls Crystal. He thanks her for the battle and becomes serious. Only one Pokemon stands between him and this victory, but he's certain that Hapu has saved her best for last. And indeed, Hapu pulls out a Dusk Ball, sending out her Palossand. She identifies the Sandcastle as one of her strongest Pokemon that she only uses in her toughest battles. She is certain that she can finish off Hao's remaining Pokemon. Hao decides to send Crabominable back into the battle. The Pokemon is still tired from the earlier match, but he's a bit more invigorated due to being able to rest a bit. Hao starts by commanding Ice Punch, but Palossand tanks the hit with Iron Defense. Hao tries to have Crabominable go in and hit a few more punches, but Palossand seems to be taking the hits just fine, despite the type disadvantage. Hao decides to order Bubble Beam instead. Crabominable launches the attack, but oddly enough, Hapu smiles. Palossand flinches slightly as its sandy body starts to sink. But then, its body seems to regenerate itself perfectly fine and becomes sturdier. Hapu states that this is Palossand's water compaction ability, allowing it to become defensively stronger after hit by a water-type attack. Hao, Selene, Ash, and Lillie are stunned by this, and Rotom says he wishes he would have warned Hao about this. Hao is nervous, but tries not to panic. He decides that he has no choice but to use the strongest attack strategy Crabominable can. He looks to his Pokemon and both share a nod. Then Crabominable launches one of its pincers at Palossand with an Ice Punch. But Hapu seems prepared for this, and she and her Pokemon nod to each other. Then Palossand stuns everyone by growing to a gigantic size, effortlessly tanking the powerful hit from Crabominable. All of the other kids are in awe, but Hapu doesn't let up and orders Palossand to use Sand Tomb. Crabominable tries to dodge, but Palossand extends its sandy body to the entire battlefield, meaning Crabominable can't escape. Hao tells the Pokemon to try to free itself, but he's unable to. Then he gets struck by a barrage of Shadow Ball attacks. Hao tries to have Crabominable punch the sand to free himself, but this only has him sinking deeper into the Sand Tomb, taking even more damage. Hapu orders Palossand to finish Crabominable off, and the living sand castle completely engulfs the crab into the sand. Hao cries out to his Pokemon, but it's too late. As Palossand returns to normal size, Crabominable is shown to have been defeated. Everyone is terrified upon seeing this. Palossand is truly powerful, and Hao only has his Dartrix left, though he's taken damage earlier in the battle as well. But Hao trusts his partner and says that he knows they can win this, so he sends the bird back out. Dartrix glares at his opponent, determined to defeat it, but he is immediately inflicted with burn damage. Hao had forgotten about that, and this makes him even more nervous. He knows he needs to end this battle quickly and starts by commanding Grass Pledge. But Palossand counters it with Sand Tomb. Despite the type disadvantage, Sand Tomb is actually able to push through and break through Dartrix's attack. Of course, Dartrix's flying type allows him to avoid damage, but it doesn't save him from an incoming Shadow Ball that was launched while he was distracted. Dartrix doesn't want to show weakness, so he goes in for Steel Wing. At first, things look successful as he chips sand off of Palossand, but the sand just regenerates, and it appears no progress is being made. Even worse, Hapu orders Shore Up. A move Rotom points out allows Palossand to recover health. Hao is distraught as he's being utterly overpowered. No matter what he does, Palossand has had a counter. Dartrix uses Razor Leaf, but a strong Shadow Ball blasts straight through this and knocks Dartrix out of the way. Dartrix is struggling back to his feet, and it looks like he's on the verge of fainting. Hapu decides to finish things by calling for a final Shadow Ball, and Palossand creates an enormous ghostly orb and fires it at the bird. Hao calls out to his partner and begs him to power through. As the Shadow Ball heads toward Dartrix, he can't even dodge because the attack is so huge. So he has no choice but to dive straight toward the attack with a Brave Bird. Hao and the others are impressed as Dartrix tries to push back the attack. Suddenly, he's surrounded by the ghostly energy and begins glowing. Hao, Hapu, and all of Hao's friends are stunned as Dartrix evolves into Decidueye and manages to push back against the attack, destroying the massive Shadow Ball. Hao is beyond excited, and Hapu becomes unnerved. She quickly calls for a Sand Tomb, which can now hit the Ghost type. But Decidueye uses a now much more powerful Grass Pledge and manages to push through the Sand Tomb, overpowering Palossand and causing it to take a massive hit. While Palossand is overwhelmed, Hao calls for Steel Wing. The large bird dives in, but Palossand manages to use Iron Defense to shield itself at the last second. Decidueye leaps back at a safe distance and uses yet another Grass Pledge, surrounding Palossand with numerous leaf columns. This is when Hapu decides to go all out and uses her Tectonic Rage Z move. Sand rages everywhere as Palossand uses this attack. But Decidueye uses his leaf hood to shield his eyes and protect his vision. He then uses a brand new move, Spirit Shackle. With his heightened eyesight and a new level of skill, the attack lands a perfect strike onto Palossand, interrupting its Z move to the shock of everyone. Hao then immediately counters with his own Z move, a powerful Bloom Doom. With Palossand caught off guard, the massive attack strikes, creating a huge explosion. And once the dust clears, Decidueye removes his leaf hood to be met with the sight of a defeated Palossand. Hao is absolutely thrilled by this, as is Decidueye, who does a victory pose in delight before giving his trainer a hug. Hapu recalls her Pokemon and congratulates Hao on his victory. She hands him a Groundium Z crystal and gives him his Poni Island passport stamp. Hao is overjoyed over his win and his partner's evolution, thanking Hapu for the amazing final Kahuna battle. And with this battle concluded, Hapu asks Ash if he's ready. You bet. It's now time for Ash's Kahuna battle against Hapu, a full battle against the final Kahuna of his island challenge. The others are a bit nervous. Unlike Hao's team, Ash doesn't have that many Pokemon to counter ground types. In fact, many of his Pokemon are weak to ground type attacks. But they have faith that he'll be able to pull through. After Hapu swaps out her last Pokeball for a fully fresh team, she begins the battle. Hapu starts with an Alolan Dugtrio. Ash decides that he'll go with Tiny for the clean type advantage. Hapu praises Ash for the smart thinking, but says that he'll need more than a type advantage to beat her Pokemon. She starts by commanding Earth Power, but Tiny jumps in the air to dodge and hits a hard low sweep. Dugtrio, however, takes the hit and uses its hairs to grab Tiny, then slam him onto the ground. Before Tiny can get up, Dugtrio burrows underground with Dig. Ash yells for Tiny to avoid the hit, but the Pokemon is moving unusually slow, so Dugtrio easily hits Tiny for big damage. Rotomdex points out that Alola and Dugtrio have an ability called Tangling Hair, which can slow down their opponents, and Selene figures that this must have affected Tiny already. The Passimian gets up though and roars angrily. He will not be overpowered. He uses Fling at his trainer's command, hurling his berry like a sports player in a game. Dugtrio once again doesn't even need to dodge and stops the attack with his long hairs, grabbing the berry flung at it. But this was just a distraction for Tiny to leap in and use a devastating close combat attack. Dugtrio takes huge damage but remains steady. Hapu orders Iron Head, and the attack hits hard, causing Tiny to flinch. Hapu decides to finish things with Tri-Attack. Dugtrio launches the attack, and with his Pokemon's movement slowed, Ash simply tells Tiny to brace for the impact, then hit back with Low Sweep. Tiny is hit hard by the powerful hits, but maintains his strength and uses the attack. Dugtrio meets it with an Iron Head though. The Pokemon collide and are flung back, neither willing to give up. Ash can tell that Tiny is feeling a lot of damage, but he also knows that the Passimian won't want to quit until the end. Hapu calls for Earth Power, and this time Tiny is hit due to his lowered speed and gets launched into the air. Hapu tells Dugtrio to wait for Tiny to land, then hit it with Aerial Ace. But Ash has a plan. As Tiny falls, Ash waits until the last minute to tell him to use the momentum of his descent to hit a strong close combat. Tiny manages to successfully land the powerful attack, intercepting with Dugtrio's aerial ace. In the end, he manages to overpower the Pokemon, taking down Dugtrio. Hapu is amazed by Tiny's strength, and Ash praises the Pokemon before recalling him for a quick rest. Hapu then sends out her Flygon, so Ash brings out Hakamo'o. The others are eager to see her battle in her evolved form. Though Lillie and Selene are familiar with Flygon's power after seeing it battle against those Ultra Beasts, so they warn Ash to keep his guard up. Hapu commands Flygon to use Dragon Rush, but Ash has Hakamo'o use her newest move, Dragon Dance. Hakamo'o quickly powers up and becomes quick enough to dodge the attack. From there, she strikes with Dual Chop, dealing a couple of hard hits to Flygon. Hapu has a counter to this though, and orders Flygon to use Bulldoze. The attack lands and sends Hakamo'o flying. Ash knows that Bulldoze can slow a Pokemon's movements, meaning part of the benefits of Dragon Dance will be immediately cancelled. At the very least, Hakamo'o still has her attack boost, Lillie thinks. Ash tries not to falter and tells Hakamo'o to use Dragon Breath, but Flygon dodges and hits her with Fly. Ash tells Hakamo'o to use Brick Break, however, Flygon uses Fire Blast to send Hakamo'o flying. Ash becomes concerned. Hakamo'o is being countered easily. Ash tells her to use Dragon Breath again, but Flygon simply flies straight through the attack to hit a massive Dragon Rush. Ash calls out to Hakamo'o, who struggles to her feet. Hapu tells Ash that his Pokemon are tough, and she likes their determination, but they're no match for her, so she commands Flygon to use Bulldoze once more. Flygon slams her tail onto the ground, causing the shockwave to form. Hakamo'o is far too slow to dodge, and she gets flung backward. Ash panics, and Hapu decides to end things by ordering Fly. As Flygon ascends, Ash tells Hakamo'o to use another Dragon Dance. Hakamo'o manages to get back to her feet and begins using the move, though Hapu tells him that this won't be enough, as Flygon is more than fast enough to still land her attack. Flygon dives down, and Ash orders yet another Dragon Dance. As Flygon gets closer, Hakamo'o uses all of her energy to power up. Right before Flygon strikes, Ash commands Hakamo'o to do a spinning dodge to avoid the hit. The Pokemon manages to execute this perfectly, surprising everyone. She then strikes Flygon in the back with a Dual Chop. This is finally enough to take Flygon down, giving Ash 2 wins early on. Ash is happy over his wins, though he isn't lost on the exhaustion on Hakamo'o's face. He considers recalling her, but she refuses to return to her Pokeball, wanting to show how tough she is, like her idol, Lycanroc. Hapu is impressed by this, but is ready to turn things around. She sends in her Mamoswine. In terms of type matchups, they're pretty even, but Hakamo'o is tired from the previous battle. Ash decides to make the most of this opportunity and commands Brick Break. Hakamo'o rushes in, but surprisingly, Hapu doesn't do anything to have her Pokemon block the attack. The dragon strikes the massive mammoth with a powerful punch. Mamoswine recoils, but maintains his footing. He then hits a point-blank avalanche, burying Hakamo'o in a frozen tundra. Ash calls out to her in horror, but as the smoke clears, it's obvious that she's struggling. She tries to get back up, but she's given no time, as Mamoswine hits her with Takedown. Hakamo'o tries to use a last-ditch Dual Chop to do some damage, but she's effortlessly overpowered and taken out of the battle. Ash recalls the Pokemon, thanking her for her hard work. Then he sends Tiny back out. The Passimian is still feeling the pain from the earlier battle, but remains tough for Ash's sake. Ash starts by ordering Smackdown, but Mamoswine tanks the attack perfectly well, then rushes forward with Takedown. Tiny attempts to dodge by jumping into the air, but Hapu stops this by ordering another Avalanche. Tiny is sent hurtling back to the ground, allowing Mamoswine to hit with Stomping Tantrum. Tiny is incredibly weak, but looks back to Ash, determined to land a hard hit. He then rushes forward, using all of his might, and uses Low Sweep, causing Mamoswine to topple over. From there he hits a major close combat. Mamoswine is hurt, but gets back up and at Hapu's command uses a powerful Fissure attack, much to the concern of everyone. The move sends a massive shockwave across the battlefield. The Passimian tries to dodge, but he's exhausted all of his energy. Rotom Dex also speculates that Dugtrio's Tangling Hair ability might have slowed Tiny down during the early battle. Anime logic, of course, as his athletic speed is nowhere to be seen. So the Fissure sends Tiny flying, and once he hits the ground, he's clearly defeated. The battle is now tied, causing Ash concern at how easily Hapu overturned his lead. He needs to be careful, as Mamoswine has proven itself to be a tough opponent. That said, he's already taken a few powerful hits from Ash's fighting types, so Ash is sure that he can get past it, and he sends out Pikachu. Ash and the others are nervous by this choice from Ash, but not surprised. After all, Ash has never let a type disadvantage stop him. Hapu meanwhile is certain that this will be another easy win, so she commands Fissure. But Pikachu easily dodges by jumping up with Quick Attack, then hitting a strong Iron Tail to Mamoswine's head. But with Pikachu up close, Mamoswine hits Takedown, hurling Pikachu backward, though he manages to get back to his feet. Hapu calls for Avalanche, and the giant ice rocks head toward Pikachu, but Ash has the mouse catch the attack with Electro Web. This keeps Pikachu safe, but the distraction allows Mamoswine to use a powerful Stomping Tantrum. Pikachu tries to dodge with Quick Attack, but he winds up hit regardless. From here, Mamoswine tries Takedown, but he cringes as he tries to run. Selene notices Mamoswine's leg seems to be injured, and Lillie realizes that this is the same leg Tiny hit with Low Sweep. It's caused him to become slower. This is when Ash realizes that he has a chance. He calls for Iron Tail. Hapu realizes that it's probably best to change tactics, so she calls for Avalanche. Mamoswine prepares the move, but Ash tells Pikachu to use Quick Attack to avoid the attack. Pikachu uses all of his strength to dash faster than he ever has. Hapu even comments that it looks like Pikachu is using Breakneck Blitz. As Pikachu propels himself forward, he strikes a massive Iron Tail to Mamoswine's head, knocking it back. Pikachu is launched upward, and as he falls down, he spins and uses another Iron Tail on Mamoswine's back. The massive Pokemon then topples over, defeated. Ash is overjoyed, while Hapu is impressed at Pikachu's strength at being able to face a ground type. But she can now see a perfect counter for his battle style, so she recalls Mamoswine and sends out her Quagsire. Ash asks Pikachu if he can continue, and he nods in approval. Hapu starts out strong, commanding Mud Bomb. Ash has Pikachu attempt to block the attack with Electro Web, but the Mud Bomb tears straight through the net, and Pikachu only just manages to dodge with Quick Attack. But that was enough time for Quagsire to hit Ice Beam. Ice Beam partially freezes Pikachu, so Ash has him use Thunderbolt to shatter the ice. He struggles to do so, however, allowing Quagsire to hit Mud Bomb, this time dealing a lot of damage. On the sidelines, Hau calls out to Pikachu to pull through, but this is when Hapu orders Muddy Water. The Mudfish creates a giant wave and hurls it at Pikachu. Ash tells Pikachu to slice the wave with Iron Tail. Using all of his strength, Pikachu managed to use Thunderbolts to destroy the ice around his body, then slash through the wave with Iron Tail, and hit Quagsire with his attack. But it was all part of Hapu's plan, since Quagsire can easily tank this hit, and now Pikachu is within range to take a Mud Bomb to the face, and this succeeds in dealing an even bigger hit. Pikachu is struggling, and tries to get back up. He lunges forward with Quick Attack, but at the last second before he makes contact, Quagsire uses Ice Beam to freeze the ground underneath him. This causes him to slip and fall forward, giving Quagsire the perfect opportunity to land a Mud Shot, blasting Pikachu back and knocking him out. Ash collects Pikachu and praises him for his amazing performance. He then tells Hapu that this has been a truly tough battle. Hapu agrees and says that she's having a lot of fun, then tells Ash to bring out his next Pokemon. Ash obliges, sending out Minior. Hapu is stunned by Ash using a Rock type against her Water type, but doesn't underestimate him, considering how well Pikachu battled against Mamoswine. The Kahuna orders Muddy Water, but Minior flies high above the battlefield to avoid the attack. She then dives down and hits a strong Acrobatics. Quagsire is knocked back, but maintains his footing. Hapu has him use Ice Beam, and this does land, but Minior's outer shell keeps her from taking too much damage. Hapu calls for another Muddy Water, and Ash feels like he has no choice but to have Minior use Shell Smash to get rid of the ice on her body and have the speed to avoid the attack. However, due to the ice, she only manages to shed some of her outer shell, but this is still enough to give her the speed to dodge the Muddy Water. Minior flies high into the sky, the sunlight coating her body in a bright shine. She almost appears to be glowing. Actually, she is glowing. Ash, Hapu, and all of the others are confused on what is happening, but their questions are soon answered as she dives down and shoots a powerful beam at Quagsire. The Pokemon is caught off guard and tries to deflect the attack with Mud Shot, but the beam blasts straight through it and hits Quagsire. The Pokemon falls back onto the ground, heavily injured. Everyone is stunned by this, as Rotom mentions that Minior just used Solar Beam. Ash had no idea that his Minior could use this attack, but is thrilled, as this will be a major benefit against Hapu's ground types. Hapu tries not to let this throw her off, and orders another Ice Beam, and Minior only just managed to intercept the attack with Power Gem, and she gets flung back. Quagsire tries to use another Muddy Water, but Ash tells Minior to quickly dodge and use acrobatics through the water to land a hit on Quagsire from behind. Minior obeys her trainer's command and lands a decisive hit onto Quagsire as he surfs on the wave, causing him to crash into the ground, defeated. Hapu continues to be impressed by the unpredictability of Ash's Pokemon, but she is determined to prove herself as the newest Kahuna. She sends out her Torterra. Ash is fine with this, as he now has the type advantage, so he decides to order Acrobatics. Minior rushes in to land several powerful strikes, but Torterra seems to be able to tank them easily. The massive Pokemon then hits Seed Bomb, dealing several hard hits to Minior. Minior tries to use Power Gem, but another Seed Bomb blasts straight through the attack, knocking Minior down. This has Ash nervous, so he recalls Minior and sends in Torracat. Ash informs the little tiger to be careful of Torterra's ground-type attacks, and Torterra nods, then roars ferociously at his opponent. Ash commands Fire Fang, while Hapu tells Torterra to use Earth Power. The giant turtle slams his feet onto the ground, sending forward a massive shockwave. Torracat is launched backward, interrupting his attack, and dealing heavy damage. Torracat gets back up though, and this time Ash orders Flame Charge. Torracat is able to increase his speed from Flame Charge and land a few hard strikes. But Torracat doesn't let himself become overpowered and hits back with Stone Edge. Torracat tries to dodge the attacks, but a strong stone strikes him, knocking him back. Torterra then hits a follow-up Seed Bomb for even more damage. The cat struggles back to his feet, and Ash tells Torracat that he believes that he can pull through. He decides to have Torracat keep his distance and orders him to use Ember. Torracat begins igniting the fur on his body to power up. Hapu meanwhile calls for Earth Power. Torterra uses his move, and Torracat is sent hurtling through the air once more, interrupting his attack. Torracat lands in front of Ash, nearly defeated. At this point, Ash considers recalling him, but before he can even grab the Pokeball, Torracat surprises everyone as his body bursts into flames, and he roars loudly. It looks like his Blaze ability is activating. Torracat then jumps in the air and launches his Ember attack. Only, the Ember bursts into a massive star shape. It's a Fire Blast. The boost from Blaze must have also powered up Ember, making it into a more powerful attack. Torracat attempts to use Stone Edge to shield himself, but the Fire Blast is huge, and he still becomes hit by the flames. Both Pokemon are showing their exhaustion, and the trainers are ready to finish things. Ash then calls Torracat to use Revenge, and the Pokemon rushes forward at an impressive speed. Hapu, on the other hand, orders Torracat to use Wood Hammer. The Pokemon then collide with their attacks, causing a huge explosion. Once the smoke has cleared, it's shown that both Pokemon have fainted. Ash is a bit disappointed to see Torracat went down, but he's proud of his new move. He also still has 2 Pokemon left to Hapu's 1, so things are still in his favor. Both trainers recall their Pokemon, with Hapu praising Ash in the battle so far. But she says that this final Pokemon is her strongest, and she'll be sure to win. She then sends out her Mudsdale. Ash, on the other hand, sends out Lycanroc, who snarls at Mudsdale as soon as she sees her. Ash tells the wolf that this is the final opponent he needs to defeat to win this Kahuna battle, which invigorates her to get the win. Hapu, on the other hand, tells Mudsdale that she knows that she has the strength to finish off both of Ash's remaining Pokemon, and the horse rears up, showing off her strength. Hapu tells her to use High Horsepower. Lycanroc attempts to dodge, but Mudsdale is surprisingly fast, and she's struck in the face by Mudsdale's hooves. But Ash tries to use this to his advantage, and quickly commands her to use Counter. Lycanroc strikes back, dealing a big hit to Mudsdale, but after she's hit, her body begins glowing. Ash is confused by this, but according to Hapu, it's Mudsdale's Stamina ability, boosting her defenses. It activates anytime the Pokemon takes a hit. This worries Ash. How is he supposed to win if attacking the Pokemon makes it even stronger? He supposes he'll have to brute force it. He orders Lycanroc to use Accelerock. She dashes toward Mudsdale, but the massive horse uses Bulldoze, sending Lycanroc hurtling through the air. Ash decides to change tactics and calls for Stone Edge. Mudsdale tries to dodge. But since Lycanroc was just a bit faster, she takes the hit. She's shaken, but once again, this activates her ability. Hapu commands Heavy Slam, and Mudsdale leaps forward and slams her hooves on top of Lycanroc, dealing big damage. Ash has her hit back with counter yet again, but this time, Mudsdale barely seems phased from the counterattack, most likely thanks to all of her defensive boost from stamina. Lillie was worried that this would happen. At this point, using counter is pretty useless. Selene also adds that Lycanroc doesn't have any long-range attacks, which would work better here. Hau calls out to Ash and Lycanroc, encouraging them to pull through. But Lycanroc is already panting heavily, exhaustion clearly setting in. She's also enraged at how little her attacks are affecting Mudsdale. Ash is greatly concerned by this, and fears that his Pokemon won't be able to do any real damage if this continues. At this point, he decides he'll need to go all out. He's been waiting for this opportunity for a while now, so he pulls out his Lycanium Z and tells Lycanroc to get ready. He and Lycanroc perform the pose for Splintered Storm Shards, and Lycanroc executes the attack. With her eyes glowing red, she lunges forward as a trail of massive sharp rocks follow her. Hapu confidently says that at this point, even a Z move will barely affect Mudsdale, so she simply tells her Pokemon to fight back with a powerful superpower. Mudsdale's entire body glows a bright orange, and she charges forward. The Pokemon collide, each fighting their hardest to overpower the other. Lycanroc growls intimidatingly as she hits Mudsdale head-on, but the horse is totally unfazed. A massive explosion rings out, shrouding the entire arena in smoke. Ash and Hapu call out to their Pokemon, and initially neither respond. But soon, the smoke clears, and both Pokemon are still standing, but they're looking noticeably hurt. Lycanroc is in far worse shape though, as she is clearly teetering on the edge of fainting. Ash and his friends are beyond impressed at Mudsdale's power, effortlessly fighting through a Z move without using one of her own. Lycanroc still doesn't want to give up, and she lunges forward with a Cell Rock, but Mudsdale strikes her back with a powerful kick, effortlessly shoving her to the ground. But this is where Hapu decides that she's done playing games, and that now it's her turn to show off Mudsdale's true power. She does a powerful pose and tells Mudsdale to use Tectonic Rage. Mudsdale slams her hooves into the ground, sending a shockwave forward. Lycanroc tries to rush away with the Cell Rock, but she loses her footing in her injured state due to the strong rumbling of the ground and falls. Mudsdale then charges forward in a glowing aura and slams into Lycanroc, sending her flying off the battlefield and into the water below. Everyone is horrified to see this, and Ash calls out to Lycanroc in shock. Lillie has Cleffy use Psychic to grab Lycanroc and bring her back to land. She does so, but as soon as Lycanroc's paws touch the ground, she falls over. She's unable to battle. Ash recalls the wolf, thanking her for battling so well, and using her newest Z move to perfection. But now he only has one Pokemon left. Ash sends Minior back out. The gleeful Meteorite is happy upon returning to the battlefield. Ash tells Minior that this is the last Pokemon he needs to defeat in order to earn his final Island Challenge stamp and Z Crystal, and he knows she can do it. Minior happily flutters around and gets into battle position. Hapu is aware that Mudsdale's ground-type attacks won't deal any damage to Minior, but she feels like her other attacks will be more than enough, especially since Minior already took damage from Quagsire and Doterra earlier in the battle. And she doesn't even have her entire shell to protect her anymore, so Hapu thinks this will be easy. She commands Heavy Slam, and Mudsdale leaps up to execute the move. Ash calls for Minior to dodge and use acrobatics. She manages to do so, but this does nothing other than power up Mudsdale even more defensively. And now that she's up close, Superpower can deal a massive hit, knocking Minior into the ground. Rotomdex points out that normally Superpower would weaken a Pokemon's defenses, making things easier for the Pokemon. But in this case, Stamina has worked to basically eliminate that drawback. That said, it also makes the Pokemon's attacks weaker, which should help Minior to power through these strong hits. Minior is still conscious, but struggles to get up, and Hapu does not want to waste time. She tells Mudsdale to use Heavy Slam quickly. Mudsdale rears up and slams her hooves into Minior, dealing another powerful hit and cracking her shell even further. Perfect, Hapu thinks. One more hit should utterly destroy the shell, allowing for an easy knockout. So she orders one more Heavy Slam. Everyone begins to panic, but Ash tells Minior to use Shell Smash to speed up and dodge the attack. Hapu's Mudsdale might be fast, but Minior is still faster, and thanks to Mudsdale cracking much of her remaining shell, She can use the move to quickly shed the rest of it, achieving her max speed, and allowing her to dash out the way and into the air thanks to her ability. Even Mudsdale is stunned by Minier's movement, and Hapu is annoyed at how she basically assisted Minier in getting this power boost. No matter, one more hit should finish the little rock. The small meteor uses her newfound speed to strike with several hard acrobatics attacks. But at this point, Mudsdale is so tanky that she doesn't even flinch from these attacks, and effortlessly knocks Minier away with a basic kick. Ash knows that he needs to finish things now, so he calls for Solar Beam. Minier begins charging up, and Hapu knows that she only has a limited time to find a way to stop this attack. After all, a long-range move will still do big damage. She realizes that her only option is to have Mudsdale simply intercept the attack. She tells Mudsdale to use the strongest superpower she can. Mudsdale begins glowing a bright golden aura as she rushes to finish off the small Pokemon. Minier fires the Solar Beam, but much to everyone's surprise, Mudsdale pushes past it. Minier continues firing the strong attack, and even though she's clearly in pain, Mudsdale is not giving up easily. She lifts up her hooves to strike, but Minier stops firing Solar Beam at the last second, then dashes forward with a quick acrobatics to Mudsdale's feet, causing her to fall backward. Ash calls for a strong power gem to finish things. As Mudsdale just barely gets back to her feet, the powered-up attack strikes the horse in the face with the power of a Hyper Beam, blasting it into a rock pillar, which crumbles on top of her. Hapu calls out to her partner, but it's over. Mudsdale is unconscious. Ash has won. Ash hugs Minier and thanks her for battling so well. Minier smiles happily and cuddles up to her trainer. Hapu praises Ash for his Pokemon's great battling skills and tells him that he's earned this Grounding EMZ and his final passport stamp. Ash is gifted his awards, and his friends praise him on a job well done. At this point, he and Hao have defeated all 4 kahunas and earned all of their island passport stamps. Technically, they now qualify for Kukui's Pokemon League. The boys couldn't be more excited, and Hapu is pleased as well, congratulating them both. But their excitement is cut off as soon they hear a voice call out to them. They look up to see Gladion on his ride Noivern, and it lands in front of them. Selene immediately asks if he's found Guzma, and the Team Skull Enforcer says, sort of. He was able to get the information from some random Team Skull grunts, who claim that Guzma and many of his lackeys are at Aether Paradise. Initially, this shocks Lillie and the others, though from recent events, it's clear that Team Skull is working with their mother in some form. Their sudden interest in Ultra Beast proves it. But knowing Guzma, Gladion is certain that something like this sounds like a trap. Selene adamantly says that she doesn't care. They need to stop Guzma before he and his crew can summon another Ultra Beast and cause more havoc. She notes how she and Lillie had to face 2 beasts at the Ruins of Hope recently and would have been in horrible danger if not for Hapu. This upsets Gladion, who asks Lillie if she was hurt. Lillie states that everything was fine, but only because they happened to be at the ruins at that time. If no one was there, who knows what could have happened to not only the cultural landmark, but the innocent wild Pokemon. Ash and Hao agree. They can't sit around and let Team Skull put the entire region at risk. With that, Gladion finally agrees. So everyone decides that they need to go to Aether Paradise to stop Team Skull once and for all.